website will be able to see and hear the proceedings. And if you haven't already, please silence any phones or other noise-making devices. And for board members, just a reminder to turn your mic on when speaking and off when not. Tonight's timekeeper will be Mike. We are going to move on to the announcement of closed special meetings held / to be held. The CA Board of Directors Architectural Resource Committee had a closed meeting on Monday, June 9th. At the start time at 1:06 p.m., end time at 2:35 p.m. The voting members present included Deb Bach, Caroline Payton, Eva Lambright, Lexi Milani, and Carl McKinney. The vote to close was 5 in favor, 0 against, 0 abstain. The reason to close was for HOA Section 11B-1, 11.4, Section 4, consultation with staff personnel, consultants, attorneys, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation. CA's Audit Committee held a closed meeting on June 10th, 2025 at CA headquarters. Voting members present were Jim Young, Tim Redmond, Bill Santos, Sky Anderson, Reg Avery. The vote to close the meeting was 5 in favor, 0 against, and 0 abstentions. The meeting was closed from 7:15 p.m. to 8:11 p.m. and from 8:12 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. The closed meeting was authorized under the Maryland Homeowners Association Act, Maryland Code Real Property, Section 11B-1114, I and IV, to review internal audit reports and consult with staff personnel on legal matters. Yep. And the Board of Directors Risk Management just got out of a meeting, I believe, tonight, 6:26. Members included Delilah and Sean and Jim. Who? Jim, thank you. Okay. The votes closed was 3 in favor, 0 against, 0 abstain. The closed meeting commenced at 6 p.m. The reason to close was Section 11B-111, consultation with legal counsel on legal matters. Section 4, consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorney, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. And Section 6, consideration of the terms or conditions of a business transaction in the negotiation stage if the closure could adversely affect the economic interests of the homeowners association. The closed meeting ended at 6:28 p.m. That's what I have there. Did I miss anything? Cool. All right. We will now move on to item 3, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion on the floor?
So.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on the agenda. Karen.
Yeah, I think that we should move the ethics discussion to new business because it concerns changes to the code of conduct as well as to the charter. And so I don't think it qualifies as old business anymore, even though we did discuss the ethics policy in the previous meeting.
So just to repeat, move the ethics policy discussion to 8C.
Yes, please.
Okay. So the motion that Karen moved is to move the ethics.
Do I have to formally make a motion?
I heard you say motion
Okay.
at the beginning. So I have Karen make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Reg. Any other discussion
On that amendment.
on that amendment, which is to move the ethics policy discussion to 8C under new business? You good?
There's nothing really under old business called ethics policy, but I actually.
Okay, so the motion is to move the ethics policy discussion to be item 8C. Karen, would you have a friendly amendment to allocate time for that?
Well, how much time are we going to give it on the other spot?
Under the 7B, I believe that there are a couple of things, but the main thing will be the ethics policy. That has 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
So I would say if the ethics policy discussion, let's move it, let's make it 15 minutes and put it as 8C.
Okay. Reg, do you accept that?
I accept it.
Okay. So the ethics policy discussion to 8C for 15 minutes. Okay. The motion is to move the ethics policy discussion to 8C for 15 minutes. I will now call roll. A vote yes is to, again, move this to 8C for 15 minutes. Sky?
No.
Reg?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Wes is absent, sorry. Mike?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Delilah?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
I will vote yes. That is, sorry, I marked Wes as present. That is 7 in favor, 1 opposed. That will pass. So 8C is now the ethics policy for 15 minutes. Any other discussion? Sky?
Yeah, the reason I voted no was to the following comment. I think that I'd like to, there are 10 recommendations about the ethics policy, and I'd like to cut the discussion in half. I certainly don't think we can do it justice in 15 minutes tonight, and I'm not sure even 30 minutes. So I wanted to do a certain number of them tonight and a certain number at the next meeting.
Do you have a motion that you'd like to make then?
Sure.
Okay.
I move to have the ethics discussion consist of the first 5 recommendations, followed at the next meeting by the last 5 recommendations.
If you would be amenable to it, if we could just do the first part of just doing the ethic discussion consists of the first 5 recommendation for tonight's meeting. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Can I ask a question of clarification?
Sky has made a motion for the ethics discussion to consist of the first 5 recommendations. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Delilah will second. Are there, Karen?
I have a question. So if we only discuss half tonight and then half the next night, does it stay new business or does it become old business the next meeting?
I would think it becomes old business because we have seen it before,
Okay.
because it's included in the packet tonight. Any other discussion? Mike?
Let's just discuss I think we should discuss all 10 tonight, and if time doesn't allow, then we can add it, whatever we don't get to the next meeting. But let's just see what we get through.
Any other discussion? Okay, the amendment is for the ethics discussion to consist of the first 5 recommendations. A vote, well, hello? A vote yes will, again, limit the discussion to be about the first 5 recommendations. Sky?
Yes.
Reg?
No.
Karen?
No.
Mike?
No.
Eric?
No.
Delilah?
Yes.
Bill?
No.
And I'm going to vote no. That's 2 in favor, 6 opposed. The amendment fails.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to amend the agenda.
Please.
I would like to take the discussion, the 10 ethics components and the ethics discussion and the 9 components of the organizational goals and objectives and make each an agenda item such that each can provide a motion and a full discussion of each component could be made. I believe by lumping 10 things together and only being able to talk twice on a motion severely limits the input of this board and restricts a good and fulsome discussion of what should be an important piece of our meeting tonight.
I second the motion.
Which is, can you?
Sure. To break up the ethics discussion into 10 agenda items, each topic being an agenda item for, we'll say, 10 minutes. And the organizational goals and objectives, of which there are, I believe, 8 or 9, break those up into an agenda item each for 10 minutes each. Therefore, that would allow each board member to speak twice at a maximum on each component, rather than being able to speak twice on 10 or 9 components.
Okay, let me make sure that I have this correct. So that would effectively make, oh God, you're gonna make me do numbers in the alphabet. So 3 through 13, whatever those letters would be for the ethics items.
Yes.
And then 14 through letter 23 of the alphabet would be for the organizational items.
Whatever the 8 items are there, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Delilah has
For
a
10
math
minutes
degree, doesn't
each.
she? She can help.
That is the motion. Is there, made by Bill, is there a second?
I second it.
Sky, Delilah, did you have a comment? Sorry. No, Eric?
I'd like to amend the motion. It seems like the idea behind the motion is to sort of get around the two speaking rule. So I just want to amend the motion to suspend the two speaking rule for this meeting.
Second. Do you want to, can Eric make that as a friendly amendment, and would Bill accept that?
I'm not going to accept that, but thank you for the offer. I appreciate it.
I second you.
Sorry. So I have a motion that to suspend the two speaking rule for this meeting moved by Eric, seconded by Karen. Did you say second for that?
Yeah, but I think it was just for those topics, right? It was just for those two topics.
I heard for this meeting, but,
For this meeting.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, I still second it, yeah.
okay. Any other discussion?
I'll say this, we were operating under these rules this year, and I'm more than willing to give this a try, and my motion beside, I think it's an interesting way to do things. So I don't necessarily think we need to suspend the two rounds of discussion rule. So that's my point.
Any other discussion? Karen?
Didn't Bill really just add like an hour and a half to the meeting, though, when you broke both those topics up?
Yes.
I feel like, is it okay if we have a back and forth discussion, Colin, or does that break your rules?
Because there won't be a motion, I think that we could probably have more free conversation.
Okay, so I'm wondering how long our meeting is now. Because I know that some people are frustrated by how late our meetings go.
So,
But I still want us to have a really good discussion about these items. But when Bill made his motion, which was seconded by Sky, it added an enormous amount of time to our meeting. So I'm wondering if maybe we didn't really think through the ethics discussion itself, and maybe we should remove that from tonight's agenda and put it onto a different agenda so that we can actually have time to discuss it.
okay.
And I don't know if I need to make a motion.
So hold on. The motion currently on the floor is to suspend the two speaking rule for this meeting. Is there any other discussion on that motion that's currently on the floor? Okay, the motion is to suspend the two speaking rule for this meeting. A vote in favor will again suspend the two speaking rule for this meeting. Sky?
No, no.
Reg?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes?
Mike?
No.
Eric?
Yes.
Delilah?
No.
Bill?
No.
And I will vote no. That is 3 in favor, 5 opposed. The motion fails. We go back to the previous motion that we had ethics discussion for creating 10 items at 10 minutes each, and then the following organizational items. Is there any other discussion
Point of
on
order.
that motion? Mike?
Mr. Chairman, can I just
Yep.
ask clarification, just because there are three separate non-ethics related policy issues. One was 3 policies that I think are obsolete. One was conversion of staff policy to staff policies, and one was governing documents. So I'm a little confused as to what 10 items we're referring to for 10 minutes each on the other one, because there are 3 separate groups of policies aside from the ethics. I don't, certainly on 2 of them, I don't anticipate issues, but, maybe there are, I don't know, but it's a little unclear to me what the
3 resolutions.
3 resolutions that would be
So
considered.
2 thoughts. First, Bill, if I could have you clarify in a moment. The second thing is if the concern for this agenda or this motion was the 2 speaking, I'm gladly to be more lenient because that's going to just be, because it's going to be under, well, what I think, well, it depends. I'll stop talking. Bill, if you want to clarify.
I understand where you are, and thank you for the chance to clarify. John, as far as I know, the only thing that got moved from new business to old business was the ethics portion of the policies package. The 3 resolutions that were external to that particular memorandum, as far as I understand, still remain in old business. And the 10 pieces are under the ethics governance memorandum that was issued by you. There is a section that says concepts for consideration, and there are 10 concepts that are listed under that title, and those are what I'm referring to, that we're trying to discuss here.
yeah,
The three that were outside, I believe, still remain in old business.
Okay, yeah, I thought you had drifted into the other ones, and I just want to make clear, that's fine.
I don't want to drift.
Mr. Chair, point of order, we've exceeded the 1 minute time limit for this agenda item.
We have. Thank you, though. Mike?
This is new business on something that's not going to get voted on tonight. We should keep it as it is and move forward. And if people think that we haven't discussed it thoroughly enough when it's on old business next time, just vote against it. And if we need to add more time at a future meeting to discuss it, right, it's new business. It's to provide some feedback to John on the general concepts that were in that, and some feedback to Sean on the general concepts. It doesn't make sense to make it an hour-and-a-half long discussion.
Any other discussion? The other thing that I'll just throw out, we've added time to discussion items as we approach them, so that's also a possibility.
Just one small response. With respect to the ethics, I understand where Mike's coming from. I don't have an issue with that. With respect to the board policies and governance documents, the organizational goals and objectives, I believe those are timely, and we need to discuss them in a fulsome way tonight and vote on them in July so that we can actually act on them for the remainder of the year. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, the motion on the floor is for the ethic discussion to be broken up into 10 items, each item for 10 minutes, and then the following organizational items, again, will have their own agenda items for another 10 minutes each. Motion made by Bill, seconded by Sky. A vote yes will make.
I'm sorry, can Bill split his motion? Can we vote on the ethics and the other things separately? It kind of,
I'll second the motion.
Hold on.
Wait.
Bill, would you accept that as a friendly amendment?
to make
will
it two
accept that.
separate things to vote on.
All right, we're going to start with the ethics. Give me 1 second. Okay, the motion on the floor now then is that the ethics discussion will be split up into 10 different items, 10 minutes each. That is the current motion on the floor. A vote yes will separate that out. Sky,
Yes.
Reg,
Come back to me.
Karen,
No.
Wes, Scotty, sorry, I keep doing that. Mike,
No.
Eric,
Yeah.
Delilah,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Reg,
No.
I will vote no. That is 3 in favor, 5 opposed, the motion fails. Now we have back to, Bill has made a motion for the second part of that for the organizational items to be split up for 10 minutes each. Bill made that motion, there still technically needs to be a second for that. Mike? No? Is there a second for that?
What was the motion again?
It's for the organizational items for the second half of what Bill just did to have separate agenda items. 10 minutes
Point
each.
of order.
Yep.
When you second it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with the motion. It just says that you would like to have a discussion on it.
And
Are you going to second it, Sky?
Sure. Thank you.
Don't think she was
Okay.
gonna until you asked her.
This is a bad idea because one of the things we need to discuss is whether we're trying to achieve too much in 1 year and whether there's a capacity to do all of these things in a single year. And if we split them all out, we're going to leave the totality out of the picture. We should really keep them all together and extend the time if needed.
Other discussion? Okay, the motion on the floor is for the organizational items, for each of those to be split up to their own agenda items for 10 minutes. A vote yes will make that change to the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, 10 each,
10 each, sorry. What did I say?
just 10 minutes.
No, that's not what I had on my
That would have saved
spreadsheet.
us 20 minutes.
Yep. Sky?
I'm sorry, can you?
Sorry, yep. Each agenda item for the organizational
Yeah.
will be broken up for 10 minutes each.
As opposed to 5 minutes each, as it is now.
No.
Not quite.
30 minutes
And 9 objectives, so that's 3 and change.
And we each get to talk twice for 3 minutes, so how much is that?
I'll abstain.
Abstain, okay. Reg,
No.
Karen,
No.
Mike,
No.
Eric,
No.
Delilah,
No.
Bill.
I can see where this is going, but I'm going to vote a hearty yes on this nonetheless.
Okey-doke. I'm going to vote no. That's 1 in favor, 6 opposed, 1 abstention. The motion fails. We are back onto the main motion as amended to pass the agenda as amended. Are there any other discussion items?
Mr. Chairman, to clarify, I believe the amended agenda is to move the ethics to new business and discuss the first 5 tonight. Is that correct?
No, it is to separate the ethics discussion as new business for 15 minutes.
It's all 10.
Yes.
Got it? Thank you very much for the clarification.
Yep. Any other discussion on the agenda as amended? All righty. Sky,
Yeah?
is that a yes or a question yes?
That's a question, yes.
We're voting for the main motion of the agenda as amended.
Yes.
Yes.
Reg, Karen,
Yes, sorry.
Mike,
Yes.
Eric,
No.
Delilah,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. That's 7 in favor, 1 opposed. The motion passes. Great. We now move on to the Columbia update. Sean?
Yes. So we've been getting a lot of questions around the end of school about our CA's before and after care program, both from the public and from some of the board members. So I thought it would be good to have Dan Burns in to give the board an update so they understand where CA is at and why. So he is here to present that.
Thanks, Sean. As Sean said, there's been a lot of questions. There always is this time of year, but it's been a little bit hotter this year around the before and after school care programs in the community, in our schools in particular. So I thought tonight what I'd do is I'd kind of collate all the questions that I had been asked and give an overview about kind of what the situation is, what the challenges are, a little background, because there was a few background questions. Just to be, what I'm not going to do is I can't get into individual schools. That's way above my pay grade. I have no idea. So I can't get into, I'll give some generalities, but I can't give individual school circumstances. So as many are aware, childcare in the U.S. has been in a crisis for a very long time. Not just childcare, but education in general is incredibly challenged. And that was happening before COVID, and after COVID, it's only gotten worse. Last year, the Maryland school system started the school year 1,600 teachers short. Believe it or not, that was an improvement from 2 years before when it was over 2,200. So there is education shortages everywhere. Childcare, according to Indeed, is one of the top 5 jobs with outward mobility, people moving out of that field into others, and we're all experiencing that. And then on top of that, we had the return to work mandate, which just kind of threw gas on the fire and made the situation a crisis for a lot of people. That's why this year in particular we've heard a little more than in past years, because there was this all of a sudden need for services. Many of you know that earlier this spring, Dr. Ball provided some grants for childcare. They were for full-time childcare centers and not before and after school care. So neither Park and Rec nor us received any of that money. But there was an acknowledgement from the county that there is a challenge in this community along with others. Before I go into this, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge a few people, and I can't acknowledge them all, unfortunately, who have given a lot over the last several years to keep our before and after school care going. Leslie Barnett has been running at the director level. She is retiring, moving on after 29 years at CA. When she keeps telling me when she came, she only expected to be here for a couple years, and almost 29 years later. She's moving on. Jennifer Harding, we hired right before COVID, has actually stepped down as of the end of last year. She's one of the casualties of that. Now, fortunately, she's staying on in a part-time capacity doing some other things for us because she's an amazing individual. But, firsthand, we have a truly experienced and great leader who chose to move on and move out of the profession. And Michelle Heflin, who's been with the program for 11 years and who is pretty much the heart and soul and keeps that running. And I've seen all of them make a lot of personal sacrifices to keep the program going, in addition to the 60-plus team members who work to make those programs stay open every day and serve all of the kids in the community. There was a question about the schools and the background. So this started way back in 1972. I was 3 years old. But we started, the Columbia Association started with the schools, and I don't know which schools, but it was just us. And then eventually Park and Rec got involved. We started sharing. And then after Park and Rec got involved, then it became the schools got divided up in schools that served Columbia, primarily Columbia areas, we would take on, and then the county would take on the others. And right now that sits at, we do 20 schools, the county does 23 schools. And all of our schools, we only have one school that really doesn't serve any Columbia areas, Worthington. All of the other ones, due to redistricting, picks up kids from Columbia. But we do cover a wide swath of Columbia with our programs. As I mentioned, a lot of the challenges largely revolve around staffing. There just are not staff available. And it's particularly challenging because before and after school is a split shift. You work in the morning, you work in the evening. And so that makes it doubly hard. We're in constant communication with the Park and Rec team, and we're struggling with the same things. So the team ends up getting stretched thin, gets overworked, particularly following COVID. The behavior of both the children and the parents has become a little more interesting, shall we say, which creates a lot more stress for the staff, and teachers are going through the same things, which makes it very hard to keep people and to bring new people in. What we're really doing to work with that is we pay for all training, and even internal team, if you want to work your way up. Let me take a step back, skipped over, before I get into that. So a school has 3 levels of staff. The basic entry level is an aide. So high school students can volunteer, or not volunteer, they can be an aide. They just help out. That does not change the ratios at all. The real triggers are teachers, what are considered teachers, and directors. And I had shared this with a couple people, but this is what it looks like to be a director. There's an onerous level of requirements that are required to be a teacher or a director. So to get people in who have those becomes very challenging. It becomes even more challenging because we don't decide that. The Maryland State Department of Education is the gatekeeper for all things we do. They approve every staff person who comes on board. And they match them up against the requirements. We've had people with master's degree in education be told they have to go take more training. So it is a very difficult thing to achieve. Now, like I was saying, we do pay for all training, and we encourage team members to level up and work with them to do that. And we have been successful in that area, and it helps retain the team. But getting new people coming in is really challenging. MSDE also approves all of our staffing plans and the capacities of all the locations. So they manage everything. We are at their behest. After COVID, and we've talked about this, was kind of mentioned in some other conversations, we've been running at about 50% capacity. Just because of staffing, we can't get the ratio. Now, on the plus side, we were able to increase ratio at 3 schools, and we're hopeful for 3 more schools this year to be able to increase, not the full capacity, but that next step up. But it is a challenge. There was an email chain going around, I think Karen with the Thunderhill PTA president and I had mentioned, talk to MSDE. While I was meeting with the school age service team yesterday, I do business reviews every year with all of the teams, and theirs was yesterday. And they were telling me they've been telling people the same thing. And now all of a sudden MSDE is being a little more flexible in their requirements when they start getting the phone calls. So that is helping some. It's not a lot. It's giving us a little bit of wiggle room potentially, and some people we can level up. But it is a hard road right now that the team is going through to staff those programs. And really, anything in education and childcare is a very, very big challenge. A little bit on where we're at. Like I said, we were able to expand 3 schools last year. We're hopeful for 3 more this year. We're looking at, right now, we have 1,137 kids registered, and that changes daily. Our capacity is about 1,250, which means that some schools are not full, some schools are full and have wait list, some are not. Right now, we have 8 schools with openings in the morning and 2 with openings in the evening. Parents have kind of figured out how they can work the mornings, and that's where most of our openings are. But evenings is really where the struggle is. So we're focusing on those. But the team is working through it, but it is not an easy answer. There is just not a magic switch. We talked about aquatics a couple years ago. For aquatics, it's just a matter of getting the bodies because we can train them. So once the bodies became available again, once kids started applying for a job, we were able to largely solve that problem. That's not the case with childcare and before and after school care. But the team is working hard to overcome it because they want to serve the community as much as anybody. But we have a lot of oversight that we have to work through, and it's oversight for a good reason. The safety of the children is incredibly important. And the team is focused on that. I even asked the team yesterday, it's like, well, has MSDE considered...
How was your walk-off music for the Oscars?
I guess I'm done. Yeah. Where's the giant hook? If increasing the ratio by 1 or 2 kids would make, has that been discussed? And they were like, nobody wants to do that because it's not good for the kids. We've already been pushed pretty hard. So, it's not a great story. The team is working and we're making some progress, but there's a long way to go. But when you hear comments in the community, have people go to MSDE. We're at their behest right now, and letting them hear and really hear where the challenges are and the need, and they know it, but when they have to answer the questions and talk to the people, all we can do is push against the rules and regulations that we have in place.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan. Because you did receive the Oscars walk-off music, we're going to continue to move forward with our agenda, and we're going to move to resident speak out. As shared previously, this time is for residents to offer constructive, respectful input on the issues before the board. I ask that everyone follow our code of business conduct and civility policy. Personal attacks, defamatory remarks, or discriminatory language will not be tolerated. Speakers who violate these expectations may be asked to stop, forfeit their time, and could face restrictions at future meetings. Thank you for helping us maintain a space for productive and respectful conversation. And lastly, we ask that all speakers just please submit your comments through the resident speak out form online. Our first speaker is Larry Scowen. Online, maybe? No? Okay. Next I have Dick Bolton as an individual.
Good evening, Dick Bolton, Dorsey Search. I I'm here, want to talk about the ethics policy. I was shocked to read the proposed changes in that policy. Not too long ago, the board was divided into two warring factions, and one faction chose to weaponize the ethics policy in order to kick other opposing members off the board. Fortunately, the move failed. Through a serious distortion to Robert's Rules of Order, one member did get kicked off the board, but his village quickly reinstated him. Another member brought a lawyer to her ethics hearing. The lawyer ably demolished the accuser's case. Nevertheless, attaining justice cost the member a pretty considerable sum of money. Two other members of were charged with a laughable case without merit that was easily rejected. And at one astonishing point, the entire board was indicted, a truly bizarre situation I'd love to discuss but can't in an open meeting. Believe me, you do not want to take the board down that road again. A few important points. You cannot deny a village the representative of their choice. You cannot deny board members the right to speak out when they feel the board has made a mistake. And believe me, past boards have made some doozies. Accused is innocent until proven guilty and cannot be denied the right to actively participate in their defense, including the right to vote in the outcome. A well-run board does not degenerate into petty personal squabbles or vindictive power grabs. Board members have a duty and a right to speak up and advocate for their villages and for CA. Trying to silence them violates everything our community stands for. For what I've seen, CA currently has an ethics program that seems to be working well. Please don't screw it up. Thank you.
Thank you. And can you make sure that you submit online that?
I can give it to you right now.
Okay.
I have an extra copy here. And if any board member wants to talk to me privately about this, I would be glad to.
Excellent. Thank you. Next, we have Sharon Boyce for a group, and I see Sharon
Bill.
is not virtual. Nope.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time this evening, for this opportunity. When our community votes for a CA board rep, I'm certain most people think that they are voting for someone who has their village and the residents' best interest in mind. And the overwhelming majority never check back to see if they actually do, unless it's pointed out to them. The only people who should ever be allowed to remove a CA board rep is their village board, as set forth in the CA charter. Not doing so violates basic democratic rule. When new CA boards make unilateral decisions to change rules and vote for policies, some that seemingly are aimed at benefiting the current majority of the board, but often at the expense of the community, and other rules that forbid board members from performing certain duties, something is out of whack. It's out of balance. And I want to remind you that we have an annual election, pendulum swing, and what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I hope you'll remember that. Okay, the definition of phenomenal is very remarkable, extraordinary, and synonyms include magnificent, stellar, marvelous, and unprecedented. So when I see and smell the stagnant, murky brown, or black, or milky white, or fluorescent green water, and rocks covered in periphyton and iron flocculate, when we're seeing stilt grass, basket grass, and mile-minute vine, just to name a few invasives, when it's baking hot where shady forest once stood, when I yearn from the ringing sound of the summer insects that we used to hear at night, when I see green plastic tubes where majestic oaks and poplars once stood, and when I saw on Wednesday the 18th that a little over 2 inches of rain flooded over the graded stream banks into the stream corridor like a river, with churned up, muddy brown water scouring the small banks and rocks away, I'm left wondering, what is better than phenomenal? Because what we had and lost, if what I just described, the SHA considers to be phenomenal, why would anyone ever consider obliterating an ecosystem that was better than phenomenal? If you're wondering how the unrestored creek would have handled the 2+ inches of runoff, you're missing the whole point. If the restored creek has no expectation of being better, or if it's even worse in handling runoff, then what was the point of the destructive project? Now, I take the SHA's description with a grain of salt, as I hope everyone in this room did. I mean, seriously, how can a 64% failure rate on tree survival in year 3 and 24 out of 70 in-stream structures failing or functioning at risk be phenomenal? And I'll remind you that the mission of the Maryland DOT is to provide safe, reliable, accessible, equitable, and sustainable transportation options for all Marylanders. Notice I didn't say the words environmental protection. The MDOT paves over the environment, and they must obtain mitigation credits for doing so, and MS4 credits for the runoff that causes. Moving on, I quote, CEA owns and maintains more than 3,600 acres of open space and 95 miles of pathways. The parks, paths, and facilities provide opportunities for residents to enjoy the outdoors, live a healthier, more active lifestyle, and gather with friends and family. Plus, the forested land in our open space filters our water, protects us from flooding, moderates our climate, and preserves biodiversity of plants, insects, birds, and other wildlife. If your property backs to CEA open space, you may enjoy increased privacy from neighbors, visits from owls and foxes, blackberries and black raspberries, just a few steps away, and the magic of thousands of fireflies lighting up your summer nights. The many advantages of living next to CEA open space are balanced by a responsibility to be a good steward to our natural areas so they can function as needed. We need you to help conserve and protect our natural resources, end quote. It makes me so proud to tell you that the CEA sustainability team wrote that. We need to protect our natural resources. If this is the new CEA mindset, we've really come a long way in 5 years. Finally tonight, from Barbara Linnea Johnson, the lightning bug. He caught a lightning bug and put it in his jar. He had to see the phenomena he admired from afar. Just a bug, the oblong kind, part beetle and part fly. A phosphorescent glow behind, a lamplighter in the sky. A dismal sight in captivity, a wee prisoner in a jar. Was this the bug of mystery he had admired from afar? Just a bug, the oblong kind, as far as he could see. And now this bug flew away as soon as he was free. Thank you for your time. Stay cool. I hope you have a great summer and enjoy the lightning bugs. They've been fantastic this year.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
All right, and board members will be reminded not to have side conversations during our meeting, particularly during resident speak out. But our next speaker is Beverly White Seals.
Hello, I'm Beverly White Seals, President and CEO of the Community Foundation of Howard County, at least for 4 more days. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the new President and CEO of the foundation, Melissa Curtin. So I'm sure you'll be meeting her and hearing from her in the future. But with my short time to speak, I want to give you a little background on how the 30-plus year partnership for grant making between CEA and the foundation evolved. We are the oldest community foundation in the state of Maryland, and we were established by James Rouse in 1969. 30 years ago, CEA determined that the informal process they went through to provide support to local nonprofits was inefficient, time-consuming, and less than objective. The decision was made by CEA's president, at that time it was Pat Kennedy, and the board of the time, to partner with the Community Foundation because of its expertise in the area of grant making and its knowledge of what services and programs were needed by and beneficial to residents in the villages of Columbia. We are audited every year and are subjected to a best practices review by the National Standards Board of the Council of Foundations every 3 years. The foundation team member who manages our grants process is Dee Athey, Director of Grants and Community Engagement. She has extensive experience in best practices for grant making. Dee pre-screens each nonprofit's application for eligibility, including 501c3 status verification, financial sustainability, completeness of the application, that proposed services are available to residents in Howard County, and more specifically benefit residents of the villages and lien properties under CA. She uses highly regarded grants management software by Foundant. Dee notifies nonprofits that applications may be submitted to an online portal. In 2024, the foundation received close to 85 applications from local nonprofits, and we issued around 50 grants. The grants committee is composed of around 20 to 25 members who are all Howard County residents or are very active in the nonprofit sector. And every person is assigned several grant applications to review. Usually 2 to 3 people review each grant to assure fairness and transparency. Applications are scored using a scoring rubric. Scores are ranked, discussed by the full committee, and the final selection is made. The foundation's board determines how much funding from the foundation's unrestricted assets will be added to CA's contribution, if it's available, each year. The foundation board is asked to approve the final selections, and grant recipients are notified of both the award and CA's contribution to the grant. Grantees are advised to acknowledge their appreciation to CA in addition to the foundation. The names of all grantees are made public via a press release, and that announcement also encourages the recognizes the financial contribution from CA. CA then received a letter every year from the foundation with the names of grant recipients. This process stopped during COVID, and CA's contribution has not been restarted, although the foundation's contribution has continued. Michelle Miller, former CA Director of Community Services, served on the committee and was quite pleased with both the process and what she learned.
Beverly, I hate to interrupt you, but your time is up. If you want to wrap up really quickly.
Members of the CA board bring lots of experience to what they do. We, however, are experts in nonprofit grant making, and I urge you to reinstate the partnership.
Thank you. And if you can be sure to submit your comments online as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Joel Hurwitz, as an individual, signed up to be online.
Good evening.
We can hear you, Joel. Sorry.
You hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, Joel Hurwitz, Harper's Choice board member, speaking for myself. First of all, regarding the submissions, I've submitted numbers online. I have gotten no response from the majority of them, and the ones I have gotten responses from, most have been unhelpful and non-responsive. Regarding 501c3, I'll reiterate again my desire that I think it's backwards that a 501c4 is supporting 501c3s rather than having some mechanism for donating to support CA. You have the Inner Harbor as a 501c3, and then you still support them as a 501c4. Regarding my friend Sharon's comments, as I will get to more, I have to correct her that I don't believe most of the boards have any authority to remove Columbia Council reps, except some rare instances when they miss too many meetings. Most of the documents reserve that right to the members of the village associations. As I've spoken to you and written about a number of times before, I've asked that you have the annual meeting of the Columbia Council held first to nominate its members from among its membership, persons to be elected and serve on the board of directors of CA, always providing the articles of incorporation of CA. That's paraphrase of what's in the articles of incorporation of all the villages, what I can tell. It's not some academic exercise that I really wanted you to do that. I wanted to understand the relationship of the Columbia Council to the villages, which over the decades and in more recent decade I've been coming, you do not. You got it backwards when you removed the prior board member, not following your own documents, which says if the village shall remove its Columbia Council rep, CA shall remove them from the board. Instead, you did the opposite, remove person first, and then ask the board to do something about it, which there's really no opportunity to do anything with. The Ethical Advocate link has 2 undated ethics policies and reporting policies. They seem to be the current ones, but I can't find a date on them. It's going to be complicated as time goes by. And where's the ethics panel charter? And I'm going to run out of time. As with the Columbia Council, if you're going to have a 3 strikes rule, which I don't like, it needs to be in the charter. You're creating a membership qualification. Disqualification from future service and membership qualification, all as provided in the CA charter. And you need to recognize that the Columbia Council is elected, not the CA board members. And are you going to want April resignation so that Columbia Council members can go campaign and then when they get reelected to avoid ban on number 8.
Joel, your time is up, but thank you. And our last was Kat Wee for virtual.
Hello, can you hear me? This is Francis Wee. Kat's not available right now, so I'm speaking on behalf of our Revolution instead. I agree with the points made by several of the other speakers. There are many changes that CA is making that are designed to limit speech rather than improve it. I understand that you are often pressed for time, but let's see, preventing board members from questioning speakouts is a mistake. There are always going to be times where a speaker brings up a topic that is important or made a point that is unclear, and the board member needs to ask questions about it. Limiting a board member to speaking twice is absurd to me. There are times where discussion requires a lot of back and forth, or one person with more expertise speaking more than others. That just seems obvious. I can't imagine any organization that would limit its own, membership. It's the decision makers from speaking. That's just wrong. Last, the plan to let the board expel board members. There are already plenty of ways to remove a board member. Most of them only have 1 or 2 year terms. Their own villages can remove them. Their voters can remove them. There does not need to be a third way to do this. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes resident speak out for this evening. We will now go to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? You do. I looked it up the other day. Yes. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, you have to ask if there's any opposition to the
Sorry, is there
consent.
any opposition to items as presented?
Therefore, the consent agenda is approved.
I've read it that we still need a first and second, but, you know, we can double check again. John, do you have any?
If it's unanimous.
It's unanimous. Okay, is there any objection? Great, the consent agenda passes by consent. All right, now moving on to old business 7A. Sean, can you kick us off with any commentary from what's in the packet?
Yes, so first is the distribution of grants. So in the packet, at a previous meeting, the board had, well, as part of the budget for the year, the board had allocated $125,000 for grants. At the previous meeting, the board had voted to allocate the funding to the Community Foundation of Howard County. Beverly White Sills was in to give the board an update about how they manage the grants and how they allocate the funding and what their process is. I thought that was really detailed. So in your packet, you will see a draft grant agreement that CA would have. This is for the board to review. And in the memo, you can see just some things to consider that the board may or may want to, but we want to include them is, first is if the board would like representation from CA on the Community Foundation Grant Award Committee, what grant increments, if any, that the board would want to determine. Do they want to be larger grants to fewer organizations or smaller grants, or just let the Community Foundation make that decision? Does the board want the grant distribution to align with CA's strategic plan and otherwise include that as part of the grant agreement with the Community Foundation? And also grant locations. I think Beverly covered this, though. They make sure that the grants are distributed to organizations that service Columbia. So, but if we could include that as well in the grant agreement. So these are just some things to consider. And then also you'll see the draft in there with the kind of the highlighted items to consider. So if the board would want to ask questions and, or, this is just for review, it's not for vote tonight, but we could certainly come back at the next meeting and have the agreement voted on for approval.
Thank you, Sean. So what I'm wondering, if we take these 4 bullet points and I will open the floor, we can have some conversation for those 4 bullet points, and then we can go from there. So the first bullet point being the representation from CA on the Grant Award Committee. If there's any thoughts or discussion on that, Bill?
I'll try and start this off with a motion, see where it goes.
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that with respect to representation from CA on the Community Foundation of Howard County Grant Award Committee, we present the president of CA, Sean McGinnis, or his designee to attend all meetings of the committee.
Regarding representation, the president or designee shall attend all meetings of the committee.
Yes, the
Okay. Moved by
CFHE Grant Award Committee specifically.
CA Award Grant Committee. The president or designee shall attend all meetings of the CA Award Grant Committee.
Yes.
Okay. Moved by Bill. Is there a second?
I second it.
Sky? Is there any discussion? Mike?
We're not voting on this tonight, so why are we making any motions? Bill, just say what you want, and then or just get feedback from the board, and then if there's no one objects to that, then it'll just get implemented when it actually comes back next time for a vote. So why are we even going through amendments and motions or anything? I don't understand.
Bill, do you want to respond?
Sure. We have 4 bullet points to discuss. Some are going to be a little more deeper and grayish in boundary. I thought this one was an easy one to put together and make into a motion. If the motion fails, we can still have a general discussion about it. I think it's a great starting point.
Other discussion? Eric?
not sure this requires a motion. Can't the president just attend the meetings? I'm not sure they need this board to direct them to attend or not attend a meeting. It's fine.
It's working. Sean, do you want to respond to that?
Yes. So the question was really, how much autonomy do you want? That you can see in all of these. It's how much autonomy do you want to give to the community foundation? You can just allocate the funding to the community foundation and say, make sure it goes to the organizations that service Columbia and its residents, and leave it at that. We just want to present, hey, here's some things that you may want to think about. Do you want represent? So these are just bullet points. You don't have to agree to any of them. They can be, they weren't meant to be really detail specific, but just to kind of get the board to think, do you want some of these things or not? So it's not, like I said, you can see in the draft agreement, it can be is detailed or not. But really, this is just to kind of get the board to thinking. So it does not have to be that much input from the board if the board as a whole does not desire it.
Mike.
I mean, we have a motion on the table right now, but I would like to make a recommendation that we just have a straw poll on each of these 4 bullets. And if there's broad consensus on, hey, yes, CA should be involved, and hey, yes, we should make sure it's, aligns with our strategic plan, then we don't really need to have a discussion. That would be the discussion. It would be over. And if there's disagreement on things, then we can identify the areas that we need to hone in on for us to actually discuss.
Bill, are you amenable to that if we have straw polls?
I will withdraw my motion for the sake of the discussion.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, so why don't we take a straw poll on this first item? So for representation from CA on the CFHC Grant Award Committee. So we'll do first, if you are indeed interested in having representation from CA, if you could raise your hand for a straw. Do you have a question before we go into the straw poll?
I do have a question.
Okay, Karen.
My question is, will CFHC welcome us as a member of their grant award committee? I mean, we're just kind of making assumptions here. Maybe Beverly's shaking her head yes, so we're good.
That was, Michelle Miller's worked with Beverly and the crew before COVID, so it's a long-standing tradition.
Okay, thank you.
Sky?
And I'd like to suggest that our rep be a staff member rather than a board member, just for continuity.
Can we do the straw poll?
We'll go to the straw poll again.
I appreciate you.
Yep, but, all right, so again, we're going to do hands for if you are interested in representation from CA. Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3,
I'm just abstaining.
4, 5, 6. I think I count Karen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, 6. Opposed? Abstain? 1. Eric, I think you were, Eric, I didn't count you either, so I'm assuming you were saying opposed. Okay. All right, so the straw poll, yes, the board is interested in having representation from CA. The second item is about grant increment requirements. We have impactful large grants to a few organizations or smaller grants to more nonprofit organizations. So I could potentially see, and again, I'm open to feedback and pushback, and I could see 3 options that we have here. We could do the large grants, we could do the small grants, or then some kind of mix of both and ask staff to present what that mix might look like. Do those sound like reasonable options? Mike?
I think the other option is to just not provide guidance on this, and they can do whatever they want.
Are there thoughts on this bullet point, Reg?
So I kind of understand where Mike is going on that, but also I believe that we're going to need to have, since we're saying we want some type of representation from CA, I would assume that we want to see how our money is being spent. And I would really like to see it going to more nonprofits than just, a couple large ones. I think we need to share, get the money out and share it.
Other thoughts? Bill?
I'll just go on record. We've discussed this before, and I'll just restate it again. I think that in round numbers, $100,000 to the Community Foundation of Howard County in the form of a grant makes sense to me, with about $25,000 held back to be spent at the discretion of the president's office. I think that's a pretty good split. Others may differ, but I think that's something to at least start the discussion with.
Other thoughts? Okay, for this straw poll, again, I have 4 options written down, which is to provide no guidance, so at the discretion, that we would give small donations to more organizations. That's number 2, so small to more. Number 3 would be that we give large donations to less organizations. And number 4 would be that we ask for some kind of mix of small and large. Is everyone clear on the 4 options? Okay. Option 1, no guidance. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to be 5 on that. Option 2, for small organizations but more, 1. Option 3 was for less organizations, 0, and a mix, 0. Were there any?
I'll vote for the mix.
Okay, sorry. And was there any abstentions? Okay, that's an abstention. All right, so that is 51011. So that is no guidance from the board on the grant requirements there.
I had a suggestion on that, if you don't mind me interrupting you.
Please.
Since we have 4 choices there, it would be interesting to rank those 1 through 4 for each member, and just email you so you could kind of get a.
We can do that. So we can do that. I will say.
It's a suggestion.
I will throw it out to everyone here. Are we okay with the no guidance, or do you want to email me and then I can let Sean know? The no guidance will stand then. We will keep it at that. But thank you for the suggestion, Bill. Next, moving on to the alignment of the CA strategic plan, grants distributed to organizations that align with CA strategic plan. Is there any opposition or thoughts on this?
Seems like an over.
Yeah. I think that Eric, sorry.
Yeah, I got a question on this. How do you determine whether the organization aligns with the strategic plan? That seems very subjective. So who's making that decision?
Sean?
I can speak to that. So we would, CA, the president's office, as we review that, and they would have to, a strategic plan is pretty straightforward with the strategic focus areas and areas of emphasis. So we would want to make sure that they align with the organizations in their mission.
Karen?
We just said we weren't going to give them any guidance.
That was in the context of the grant increment, not this third bullet point, which is now about the alignment of the CA strategic plan. The no guidance was in context of the second bullet point. Okay, so as it stands, we would want the grant recipients to have alignment to the CA strategic plan. Is there any opposition? Okay, so awardees should align to the CA strategic plan. Next one and last one is the grantee locations, awarding grants to nonprofit organizations based in Columbia. Any discussion or thoughts on this, Bill?
I kind of think that based in Columbia or serve the residents of Columbia. If there is a nonprofit that is based in another city but is got a presence in Columbia and doing good for Columbia residents, I think they may be worthy of a grant based on the rubric that the Community Foundation or others are using. It doesn't necessarily only have to be nonprofits that are headquartered in Columbia.
Okay. Eric?
So does the organization have to only serve CA residents? Could it serve a mix? Could it serve one resident? So how do you determine whether an organization is serving Columbia residents if it serves like one Columbia resident and 100 non-Columbia residents? Or is it serving Columbia residents if it serves 99 Columbia residents and one out parcel resident? So how do you make that determination?
I can speak to that, I think. So we would want all the funding, any CA funding provided to the Community Foundation of Howard County would go to organizations, and according to Bill, which is fine, that they don't need to be based in Columbia, but they need to serve residents of Columbia. So that'd be pretty easy for them to see if they had a program or service they were providing that would be for, say they were providing it in all of Howard County. Well, they would have to segregate the funding to make it detail that they are serving residents of Columbia with CA's funding that's gone through Community Foundation.
We are over time for this agenda item, but I think that we could hopefully knock this out unless anyone else wants to add. We have two options for the straw poll right now, which is number 1, based in Columbia, and number 2, serves Columbia residents. Delilah?
Could it be that the grant project specifically serves people of Columbia?
Okay, so serves people of Columbia.
That on their application, they have to prove how it's going to serve Columbia residents.
Okay.
I like that.
Sky?
Yeah, we have that stipulation in our village, and we use the word primarily.
Okay. I want to keep it to clarifying the straw poll. So again, option number 1 is based in Columbia. Number 2 is serves Columbia residents. And number 3 is serves people of Columbia. Does anyone have any addition? Did I get that right, Delilah?
No,
Sorry.
No. It was that not to base it on who the organization serves, but what the specific grant project being funded serves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if an organization serves wherever, they can still be eligible for a grant if that grant is going towards Columbia.
Okay, project serves Columbia. Is that better?
No.
Wording?
Yeah, so like for instance, if I might, if Habitats for Humanity wanted to apply for a grant and their project said we are going to be working on lien assessed property, then that would be what we would be angling for, not just for Howard County residents or something.
Yep.
And that's a for instance, and I don't want to, but yeah.
Sky?
I don't know the difference between people and residents.
That was a flub on my part. That's not going to be in the straw poll.
Okay.
So the straw poll options right now are number 1, based in, go ahead, Mike.
I would like a third option of no guidance for this one, and
Okay.
that we can just safely assume that, I think this conversation is really demonstrating why the Community Foundation is important, because we're all kind of wandering outside of our wheelhouse right now, and that they understand it better. So I think by having a CA representative on the committee, and by saying it has to align with the strategic plan, we're getting the message across without having some restraints. I'm just making a recommendation for a third option on the strong poll. I don't think we really need to refute what I'm saying.
Reg?
So I'm just need a little clarification here. Actually, I thought we had 3, so yours would be the 4th, wouldn't it?
Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Eric?
So I think the problem with this whole discussion is we're trying to create all kinds of rules and rubrics and criteria on what these organizations will be. And the problem is we don't know who these organizations are. So if and when we approve this $125,000, we have no idea where this $125,000 is going. So I think an easier solution is, why don't the organizations just apply to CA and we, in an open board meeting, just just get to vote on which organizations get the money. That's the way we've done in the past. We've done that with IAT. We've done that with the Veterans Memorial. That's the way it's been worked in the past, and it's been successful. I don't see why we're changing this process now.
Okay. This process has been voted on during this budget cycle, but at any rate, we have 4 options for this straw poll. The first is based in Columbia. The second is serves Columbia residents. Third is the project serves Columbia, and 4th is no guidance. And because, for the sake of time, we're just going to continue with the straw poll vote. Does anyone need me to repeat the options again?
Yeah.
Number 1 is based in Columbia. Number 2 is serves Columbia residents. Number 3, the project serves Columbia. And number 4 is no guidance.
Oh, dear God.
I'd like to add the option of all of the above.
Sure. We will add 5, all of the above. Okay. Here we go. Number 1, based in Columbia, 0. Serves Columbia residents, 1. Project serves Columbia, 1, 2, 3, 4. No guidance, 1, 2. All of the above, 1. All right, so that is project serves Columbia. All right, and Sean, just to confirm, do you need any other guidance from us, or so help us God? Hopefully that was sufficient.
Nope, that was great. So at the next meeting, we should have a finalized agreement for the board to review.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we will now move on to our next.
I have some questions.
Related to?
Yeah.
Or overtime, Sky, for this agenda item.
We do have a policy about grants and we have a policy about donations. So this makes almost a third policy. And if we put in the amount of money, then this is just good for 1 year. We'll have to do another one for the next year. Those are just my 2 comments.
Sean, do you have a quick response to that?
I do, yes. So we do have a grant policy and a donation policy. This is not that. So this goes with the grant policy. This is the agreement that CA has with the grantee. So with the Community Foundation of Howard County. So it's not a policy, it's just the agreement so that that CA has some control over the way the funding is distributed by Howard County, Community Foundation of Howard County.
Okay. We're going to, thank you, Sean. We're going to move on to 7B now, which got amended, as folks may recall, that it's going to be scoped to the board policies and government's documents, less the ethics policy discussions. So, John, I'm going to throw it to you if you have any commentary to kick us off.
Okay. I'll just take these one at a time. I think hopefully it won't be that difficult. The first is the rescission of obsolete policies. I should back up. I know we've been here a few times. As we were in the process of categorizing and thinking maybe we can get to the point of putting numbers on documents, we saw a few more that we think should be categorized in a different way, again, so that we can reduce the number of actual policies, put them in various categories or buckets, and make it easier to organize going forward. So that's why we're doing this. The first one is the rescission of obsolete policies. And there are 3 listed here, and these have all been basically, well, I'll say 2 of them, number 2 and number 3, they've been superseded. The evaluation policy, the board in April of this year passed a new evaluation policy. So the one that's listed here from 2022 is just not in effect anymore. It's obsolete. So we just archived that. The purchasing policies and procedures, that was the policies that were effective in 2024. And on May 1st of 2025, we have new policies that were approved. So there's no reason to have the 2024 policies anymore. They've been superseded, so those are gone. And then this policy of allowing non-residents to play at Fairway Hills, I think the practice has changed, and honestly, as a public accommodation, I don't think we can restrict people from using our facilities. So it's obsolete, and there's no reason to have that. So that's I think the easy version of these policies. We can just archive them because they basically don't apply anymore. We get rid of those. The second category, again, we've talked about this before, is the integration of various policies and procedures into the governing documents. Again, if you look at these, I think these are more procedural in terms of how you run your meetings, recordings of meetings, what you do. They govern your internal rules. There's no reason to have separate policies. We'll put those all into the governing documents, And rather than have here 10 more separate policies, or 8 more to consider, we put them all in the governing documents. We bring the governing documents for you. You have one vote on those, and you can make amendments when you vote, saying, we don't like this, I move to amend this portion. It's just a lot cleaner and easier rather than have separate policies as to basically how you conduct your meetings and, the fact that, how you use email, how your expenses are reimbursed, residents speak out. Those are all governing document issues. So that's why we're doing that. And then the final one is the transition of board policies. I guess the easiest way to say this is that we think some of these things that have been categorized as policies are basically operational matters that we think belong in the realm of Sean's purview. And by doing this, we let the board concentrate on its true function, which is strategic oversight rather than managing day-to-day operations. That's the goal of these. We've got 20 of these identified in there. And so if we look at these, I mean, there might be a sentence or two you say, well, that looks like a policy. I think they're largely operational. And I think it's something that falls under the CEO's purview as the person who runs the organization and reports to you, rather than something strategic that the board should be involved in. So that's the rationale for those.
Okay, and if you could remind me, where do we land with the reading rules and the resolutions in the packet?
Well, I mean, I think these have been considered before. I think there is, in terms of the, let's see, the integration, I mean, we've considered obsolete policies before, so I don't think there's any problem with that in terms of voting on it. I think the integration of board policies in the governing doc, we've considered that before, just another flavor of that. And this would be the third reading of the transition of board policies to staff policies.
Okay, very good. Ooh, okay. Karen.
Thank you. Hey, John, I didn't ask this question before. First of all, I know you've been doing yeoman's work with this, and I appreciate it. But my question is, some of these staff policies, not all, but some of these staff policies, can they be shared once we make them staff policies, like the tree planting policy, things like that? Those are things that I'd like to see on our website as to how CA handles those types of things. So can we also say, we're going to make these staff policies. I don't disagree with your assessment, but I would like some of them to be transparent to our residents.
I mean, I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think that's Sean's call. I mean, I certainly would.
Right.
I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think that's something that would benefit the community, and we put other policies on there for example, the committees that are now staff committees, all the rules are on there. So I don't see anything wrong, but Sean's the CEO, and that's his call, and I'll defer to him on that.
Yeah, I agree with John. I mean, we would have to look at those to see, we are all about transparency, so I would not have a problem, but we would want to review them just to make sure there wasn't anything in there that maybe was, would be confidential or would not be for sharing with the public. I don't, like off the top of my head, I can't think of anything, but we would have to review them first.
And apologies, I should have asked if there was a motion that someone wanted to make on the floor. So is there a motion? Mike?
I would like to move that we approve the rescission resolution as well as the organization into governing documents resolution.
I second it.
Why didn't you include obsolete policies?
All right, the motion that I have is to approve the rescission resolution and organization and governing documents resolution. Okay, motion by Mike, seconded by Sky. Discussion. Is there any discussion? Okey doke. So again, the motion is to approve the rescission resolution and the organizational and governing documents resolution. A vote yes will rescind the resolution and organization and governing documents resolutions. Sky,
Yes.
Reg,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Delilah,
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
I will vote yes. That is 8 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstain, 0 absent. The motion passes to approve the rescission resolution. That's a lot to read. It passes. Is there another motion? Okay, Mike.
So I'm going to explain my rationale for this. I think there's a little bit in the self-insurance reserve policy, so number 7, and the membership rates and fees policy, number 14, that probably is a little bit, I think that that's in the interest of the board to keep some of that, not all of everything that's in there, as a board, kind of board guidelines. I don't even want to say board policy. So I'd like to see that make it into some sort of board directive somewhere. So what I'd like to motion is that we approve the resolution for transferring policies to staff policies, with the exception of the self-insurance reserve policy and the policy statements for membership rates and fees.
What numbers are those?
7 and 14.
I am going to just put number 7 and number 14 in this motion, but I have it as approve the transition of board policies into staff policies resolution, except number 7 and number 14. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, moved by Mike and then seconded by Sky. Eric?
Friendly amendment to,
Yes.
friendly amendment to add 13 to the exclusion. It's similar to 14, and they run parallel. And also friendly amendment to add 8 to the exclusion.
Hold on, can we do one friendly amendment at a time?
Neither are going to be accepted
And,
as a friendly amendment.
okay, I'll make 2 motions. The motion is to also exclude 13
Hold on,
and 8.
Okay, so the motion is to additionally exclude, I'm sorry, Eric, 8 and 13?
13. So 13 and 14 are fairly similar policies. They both refer to whether CA lien holders get a discount.
So your amendment is to additionally exclude number 13?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, right now it is for the additional exclusion for number 13 solely.
And 8.
Eric
They're divided
confirmed
motions.
only number 13.
Yeah, I divide them.
So again, the motion is only exclusion of number 13 right now. Karen?
I just have questions.
Yep.
I wonder, the thing is, what is can I only talk about Eric's, or can I talk about Mike's?
We're with Eric's right now for number 13.
Okay, my questions are for Mike's, never mind.
So we're on number 13 right now. Is there any other discussion? Okay, so we are doing an amendment to additionally exclude, no, sorry, it's just an amendment, you're right, sorry. This is just an amendment to additionally exclude number 13. Is everyone clear?
Yeah.
So a vote yes will remove number 13.
Okay.
Okay? Sky?
I'll be last.
Okay. Reg?
Yes.
Mike?
No.
Eric?
Yes.
Delilah?
Yes.
Bill?
No.
Sky?
Yes.
I will vote no. That,
Karen.
I didn't get to vote.
oh, I'm sorry. Wes being absent is messing up my spreadsheet. Karen?
Karen, yes.
Okay, that is 5 in favor, 3 opposed. The amendment passes. Okay,
Can I jump in with a quick point of information?
yes.
Eric, I sat in that chair last time. That mic is always on.
I'm figuring out the mic.
This mic is sometimes on, that mic is always on.
Okay, so we are back to the main motion, which is to, as amended, which is to approve the transition of board policies into staff policies resolution, except number 7 and number 14, and now number 13 as well.
But that's not part of our vote for Mike. He only excluded 2 things.
And that was just amended.
And it was just amended.
Oh, we amended his amendment? I
Yes.
apologize, I'm not following.
I didn't make an amendment.
Yep. Eric?
I'd like to offer an amendment to exclude 8. I believe this is under board purview. And I'm not sure how the Office of the President and General Counsel can actually write a policy to exclude their own salaries. That seems like a conflict of interest.
Okay, so Eric, your motion is to additionally exclude number 8. Is there a second?
I'll
Yes.
second it.
I'm sorry.
Reg? Any other discussion? Mike?
I'm not sure you understand what 8 is, Eric. What do you think 8 is?
So 8, I believe, is a policy that states that is basically where people can request information on staff salaries. So if someone asks for the, say, the staff salary of someone in the Office of the President or General Counsel, they're effectively writing a policy that governs whether or not they feel like releasing their own salary, and that's circular. That's a conflict of interest. So this, I believe, rises to the board level.
I see. Okay. Well, I disagree with that, but I understand what you're saying.
Are there other discussions for the exclusion of number 8?
I will just add, this policy was created because of the Home Financial Accountability Act of 2009. So just requiring homeowners associations to provide information on salary. So it's not for the council or the president to, not provide their salary or provide it. It's just, this was to adhere to a law that went into effect in 2009.
So what you're saying is you have to follow the law, doesn't matter where the policy sits.
Well, it was a policy based on the new law and what the procedure would be for providing the information if it was requested.
So if I agree with that, Sean, how would I vote? Double negatives.
It would be no, Sky, because the motion as it is to additionally exclude number 8. So a vote yes would exclude number 8. Okay, are there other discussion? So again, the motion is to, Eric made an amendment to additionally exclude number 8 from the list as presented. So a vote yes will remove number 8 from the list. Okay? Sky?
No.
Reg?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Mike?
No.
Eric?
Yes.
Delilah?
No.
Bill?
No?
And I will vote no. That is 3 in favor, 5 opposed. The motion fails. The amendment fails.
One other
Sorry.
amendment?
Eric?
I'd like to make an amendment to exclude number 11. I believe this also rises to the board level.
Okay. Eric is making a motion to additionally exclude number 11. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Reg? Discussion? Reg?
Yeah, I don't quite understand what we're doing here on this one.
So this refers to whether or not law firms have a conflict of interest within CA. So I certainly, I believe that anytime we have a conflict of interest, that really comes to the board level, where the board should be the ones responsible for determining whether or not that conflict of interest is okay or can be waived, or whether that is a problem. So I believe that this should be a board policy. I don't see why. I think this needs to come to the board.
John, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, conflict of interest in a legal sense is a legal matter, and with all due respect, the board has no expertise in that matter at all. I'm not aware of any board of directors that involved in hiring legal counsel and determining conflicts of interest. It's just not done. I mean, the Microsoft board is not voting on which legal counsel. That's purely an operational thing. So I just think this is so out of the realm of something that the board should be involved in that there's no reason to do that. That's my view.
Other thoughts? Okay, the amendment on the floor is to additionally exclude number 11. so a vote yes will remove number 11 from the list. Sky,
No.
Reg,
No.
Karen,
Yes?
Mike,
No.
Eric,
Yes.
Delilah,
No.
Bill,
No.
and I will vote no. That is 2 in favor, 6 opposed, 0 abstentions, 0 absent. The motion fails. Any other discussion? Alrighty, we are on the main motion as amended then, which is to approve the transition of board policies into staff policies resolution with the exception of number 7, number 14, and number 13.
No, it was, I thought, oh yeah, never mind.
Did I miss any?
Could you repeat it one more time, please?
Yep. To approve the transition of the board policies into staff policies resolution, except number 7, number 14, and number 13. Okay, so a vote yes will approve the list without the ones that we just struck, which were 7, 14, and 13. Okay. Sky,
Yes.
Reg,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes?
Mike,
Yes.
Eric,
No.
Delilah,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. That's 7 in favor, 1 opposed, 0 abstention, 0 absent. Okey doke. Are there any other motions related to this agenda item or other discussion? Okey doke. We move on to our next item, which is 7C, the FY26 board meeting schedule discussion. Sean, do we have any new updates, or Dan, new updates on this? Or did I miss?
No new updates on the meeting schedule. But this is what's been provided, what's in your packet.
Okay.
Now, there's, I know the board had discussed town halls on certain dates, so that is still up for the board to decide.
Eric?
I move to table this item. We've already approved the schedule. I don't see why we're changing the schedule now.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
If we're going to table, I'd like to know a table until what date?
Not required.
Not required.
I think it is required.
Not required.
I could double check real quick, but I don't think it is, because I think that we can just bring it back up.
Is John the parliamentarian?
It's not required.
We don't have a parliamentarian.
We don't have a parliamentarian?
No.
No.
Huh.
Okay, I move to table it to April of 2026.
So Eric, before, sorry, but a motion to table does not require a specific date.
Okay. Then I don't need to give a date.
And it's been seconded.
Privileged motion, so
And
we
it's
need
a
to vote.
privileged motion, so we don't, so we're good. We've tabled this motion for tonight.
Well, we got to vote on the tabling. You still have to vote on the motion.
Yep, you're right. Okay, sorry. It's not debatable, though. Thank you. All right, so so I'm hearing then it was Eric is first for the table. Karen, did you second the table?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So we are tabling, this is 7C, moved by Eric, seconded by Karen. Okay, a vote yes will table this discussion for tonight. Sky?
Yes.
Reg isn't here right now. Karen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Delilah?
Yes.
Bill?
No. I wanted to talk schedules.
Colin? I'm going to say yes. Reg, I'm going to put is not currently present. So it's going to be 6 in favor, 1 opposed, 0 abstention, 0 absent. The motion passes.
Move for a 5-minute recess so Reg can come back.
I'm okay with that.
Second.
Well, all right, 5-minute recess.
Return at what time?
8:45.
year. What I did to kind of help with the board was to show the goals from last year and what was accomplished, and you'll see that up on the screen. The first 3 goals, I won't go into them, but the board has seen those throughout the last few months and updates on those. The 2 goals, which I've renumbered 1 and 2, are a continuation of goals from last year. As you may remember, there were some that were considered short-term, which was 1 year, and long-term, which was, 2 to 3 years. The increases in community engagement through the website and also our GIS, that continues. This year, we hope to start the redesign of the website and also to continue to enhance the GIS system. It's been actually very well received by the public and gets a lot of views. So we'll be back to kind of talk about that at a future meeting. Also, the number 2 on here now is continuing the Natural Resources Stewardship Plan that we started in the spring. So that will go through its complete phase this year and should be done by April. 3 and 4 on here are 2 items that I have slated to remove. Excuse me. These are items we're continually working on as an organization. So to have them as specific goals, everything we do, particularly number 3, analyze opportunities to add value or reduce costs associated with accessing and using CA facilities, programs, and services. We are continually doing that. You hear Dan Burns come in to discuss it, Jeremy to discuss it, Susan before she left. This, a lot of what we do is making CA programs, services, and facilities accessible and affordable for everyone. That's part of the strategic plan. It's part of our areas of emphasis. So I don't really think it needs to be included as a goal. Same with number 4, advance CA's vision, mission, and values by meeting, exceeding key benchmarks. This actually relates to the organization, which you see a lot of metrics throughout the year, but also this goes back to the president CEO evaluation. And there's a lot of criteria in that. So I think these can be removed. And then when we talk about some new goals for the board to consider for this year, we've added them similar to last year, with their shorter long term, what key areas of the strategic plan that they address. So you'll see the membership rate study, which would be identify membership trends, identify areas for improvement, optimize membership strategies, and evaluate opportunities to maximize value and access to CA facilities for residents. This would be both short and long term. We could certainly do the study, but it takes time to do the study, and then any implementation would be going into FY27. We also discussed last year an economic analysis of Columbia to assess the economic impact of CA on the Columbia residents, businesses, Howard County, Maryland, and the region. I think this is vital in light of what's been going on the last few months to really take a deep dive into what, the future of Columbia, Howard County, Maryland, and the nation, and how that reflects on CA and its residents and businesses. Next would be the initiation of long-term capital planning, really assessing our current and future facility needs, not only major renovations, but expansion or consolidation, and start to develop a financial plan to support the capital needs. You've heard me talk a lot about, oh, I'm sorry, there's fireworks going off in the background. The CA is, 57 years old, and we want to start to plan for the next 57 years. So, part of that is this long-term capital planning initiation, and this would be 2 years as well. Our goal would be to really do it internally this current fiscal year, and then look to seek some external consultant support once we kind of have in place what we think we're looking at, just to have a second set of eyes. Number 8 here is board governance and charter study. To evaluate the guidelines, the structures and practices by which the CA board operates to effectively manage the community and represent the best interests of the villages, its residents, and businesses. Once again, it's prudent for any organization to look at its governance and charter on a regular basis to make sure it's being as efficient and practical as possible. So I think this is a good study for the organization to conduct moving forward. And lastly, board development. And also, we talked about this a lot, but really to have a structured program for participation in programs designed to equip the CA board members with the knowledge and skills necessary for effective governance in their roles. So we've talked about that. It happens, once a year, but I think it might be helpful for the board to have it a continual program throughout the year to kind of discuss and put into practice some of the responsibilities and roles of the board.
All right.
So that's a kind of a summary of what we're proposing. This is just what we propose. The board can certainly make other decisions if we can consider them. There's no vote required tonight. It's really just to have a discussion about it and ask questions, and we can certainly come back at the next meeting and finalize some things.
Very good. Thank you, Sean. So I want to talk about facilitation for how we can go about doing this. Because this is new business, and to just reiterate what Sean just said, there's going to be no votes, so it's just conversation. So I see two options of how I can help facilitate this conversation. The first one is that we can go item by item, and if people have commentary, thoughts, questions, we can just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that'd be option number one, is that we can do item by item. Number two, we can just go around the horn and monologue, and people can just share their thoughts, and we can, I can call on people, we can go on order, doesn't make a difference to me. But those are the two options I see how we could facilitate this. I don't know if other people see a different way to facilitate this conversation for it to be productive. Karen?
I like number two. I think a free-flowing conversation honestly would work best.
Okay.
Because I think the board members then hear what each other are saying, that triggers other thoughts, things that we're not considering. So I prefer number two.
Mike?
I strongly prefer the first one. The second one just has us going off on tangents. The first one enables people to prepare, say what they need, give the feedback to staff, and then next time when it's on old business, then we can make motions and go back and forth as needed.
Bill?
I understand both points of view here, but if we only comment on what is listed here, there's not a lot of room for questioning if there's anything else we may want to add.
Good point.
Okay. So again, the facilitation, I'm having two options. Number one is item by item, and then I can call on people and chime in, 2 per. And number two would be going around the room, and you would just share all your thoughts at once. Those are the two options. Okay, so those that are interested in item by item, show of hands for item by item.
Didn't you say that's what you liked, Mike?
But he's basically doing a straw poll.
Yeah. So item by item, straw poll. Okay, and then the going around the horn, calling on people, monologuing. Okay, that is how we will go. Who would like to go first? Eric?
So I'm incredibly concerned that we're removing 3. This is a high-level strategic goal that the board passed last year to reduce costs. When I was campaigning for re-election, one of the things I've heard are the costs are too high, and we need to reduce our resident costs. And the thing that people have mentioned over and over and over again is the annual charge bill that they're going to get in a few weeks is too high for the services they're getting. So to strike 3, I find very concerning. I think we need to do a better job getting our resident costs down, including lowering the annual charge, including lowering our fees to use the gyms and the pools. If you look at Reston, their annual charge is under $1,000, and they get access to their pools. I mean, in my village, they're paying 2 and 3 times that, and they get no access. So I am really concerned that we're striking 3. Now 5, you could theoretically argue that 5 could go in that direction, but 5 is actually very tactical. 5 is, okay, how would you reduce costs? And a membership rate study is one tactic to do that. So I've got no problem doing a membership rate study, but this is tactical. This is something the CEO can say, okay, this is how I'm going to go about achieving 3. So I would just get rid of 5 and let the CEO implement 5 as part of implementing 3. So I think it's really important that we retain 3. The last board passed it. I think it is critical that we provide a better value for our residents. And the other one I would support is 7. I think it's really essential that we have a long-term plan for capital expenses. Thank you.
Thanks.
Go around, or are you gonna?
We could go around, I could call, Karen.
Yeah, so one thing that I would really like to see is we've got these goals listed as short-term and long-term, but I would actually like to see some critical milestones associated with all of these goals. So number 1, everyone really loves number 1. We love the GIS system. We all think that's fantastic. And so, but I would like to see, what is the plan to roll out the rest of GIS, and when do we actually expect it to be completed? Like, what are all the different components of it? When will it be done? Whether it's used for the paths, used for the, finding out whether your pool's crowded, the other ways that we're using it. So what is the complete GIS program? When do we expect it to be fully completed? And what are the milestones within there? So I think that would be super helpful. And I'd like to see that, honestly, for all the goals. I'd like to see some critical milestones that people hope to achieve. So for example, develop the natural resource stewardship plan. We had the charrette. The survey is out on the website, but what are the next steps in this? What is our overall timeline with this? Where do we hope to be in August? Where do we hope to be in October, December, those types of things? I would like to know, how are we progressing towards that plan, and when do we expect to have a draft plan that the board can actually review? So I would like to see some really good deadlines for that. I agree with Eric on number 3. Last year I really struggled because I felt like the budget that we got last year did not make any changes. It was as if we said, well, we already do all these things, so we don't have to keep doing it, which is basically what Sean just said to us. And I don't think that's sufficient anymore. I think that we need to be looking at new ways. We need to be looking at our budget and determining, are there alternatives? Where are we spending our money? Where is our focus? And how can we make things cheaper? Not just offering the income qualified memberships and things like that and the points program, but actually looking at ways to decrease our costs so that we can start giving some value back to the residents. So I'm not in favor of removing number 3 either. The membership rate study could feed into that. Thanks, Mike. The membership rate study could feed into that. So I would be okay with making that a part of that goal. But other than that, I think I'm fine. I really would want to know, like, number 9, that's such a loosey-goosey goal to me. Like, programs can cover a range of topics. So what I would like to see on number 9 is I would like to see an actual curriculum. I would like to see what is it that we actually think the board needs to know, what are the skills that they need to have, and this is the curriculum we're setting up, and this is how you take these, this is how you take this training during the term when you're on the board. I don't think this is a well thought out goal the way it is. That's all I got.
Mike?
I think these are all really good goals. Can I ask Sean a question? Mm-hmm. Sean, is it feasible to do all of these goals? Is it feasible to do all 9? Is it feasible to do all 7? If we remove those?
Great question. It's in the memo that's prior to this in the packet. Last year was, a heavy lift with the amount of goals that were established. And the board was not happy with some of the results of the goals. They made that clear to me. So I've recommended, we have 2 existing goals, the number 1 and 2, the community engagement and natural resources plan. I recommend the board select, 1 or 2 in addition to that. And I presented the others, 5 through 9 to be for the board to consider.
Thank you. So with that, I think these all have merit, but in order for the staff to be able to do a good job on all these things, and I think, I understand what you're saying, Karen, it would be good to understand milestones and what are we actually working towards here. Providing that in advance would require a lot of work as well, so that would make these things even more time-consuming. So I think then, that being the case, the two I would prefer to add to 1 and 2 would be the long-term capital plan initiation and the board governance charter study. And I would hate to lose the board development, but that would be my priority, and I would put the membership rate study, the economic analysis of Columbia, and the two that Sean is already recommending removing. That's what I would remove. Over.
If no one else has
Second.
anything to say, can I say?
Your
Yeah,
second time?
Yeah,
Yep.
that's totally fine. Mike, the reason I'm asking for milestones is just like any project plan, right? You don't just hand somebody money and then be like, hope you get it. You want to know the specific milestones that they're going to meet. And I think it would be really helpful for the board to understand where are we with certain things. And I think that, it doesn't have to be, every board meeting they come back, but like some sort of report or something that we get says, here's where we are with the project. I mean, we have really good project managers here at CA, so I feel like they could come up with project plans for this stuff. If they don't already, I can't imagine that they don't already have them and they understand what the milestones are, so.
Bill?
All right, my turn to shout into the wind here. It's a couple of things. As I read these, and I want to recognize that each one of them in its own is a heavy lift, certainly worthy of a year's worth of investment, or at least 8 months that we would have left when we approve these, right? But it looks like improve the website and 5 studies. Broadly speaking, once again, I want to say that each one of these in itself takes a lot of effort. But if I'm trying to shorthand these, number 2 is a plan, number 5 is a study, number 6 is a plan initiation, or I'm sorry, number 7 is a plan initiation, 6 is an analysis, 8 is a study. We're all talking about the same language there. I think that in lean times, we're not going to be doing huge capital investments. We're not going to build a casino or, any other big thing here. Doing studies to improve our processes, recognize ways to save, way to innovate, I think are important. So we probably need to choose 2 or 3 studies to work on. I think the long-term capital plan also should include a component of a computerized maintenance system, CMMS. If we already have one, it hasn't been updated in quite a while, so that we know when to change out pool pumps or treadmills or air distribution equipment throughout our entire fleet. That would save us a ton of money with an initial outlay and investment. So I think that should be part of the long-term capital plan initiation if we do that. And then the last thing I'll say is that what I don't see in here is I'd like to collect data, specifically on the GIS and the website. We should get some analytics which show, well, we changed the website. Are we getting traffic to the website? Is it a reasonable amount of traffic? Is it a high? What parts of the websites are popular? What parts are not? We should do some analytics. I think we ought to do some analytics like on our water quality in our lakes. We should check, the overnight temperature has been no cooler than 78 degrees. So I'm sure all of our lakes are wicked hot, which is going to grow the algae like crazy because it's just cooking in there. But if we could get seasonal temperatures, pH, conductivity, phosphorus, nitrogen, that would help us build a database as to what the health of our lakes are using actual numbers rather than just the visual subjective look at, well, it looks like there's a lot of vegetation out there or not. Like to get path counts, which paths are more popular, which are less. And I think we ought to start exploring that and figuring out how to collect data in a more meaningful way to figure out how we can better allocate resources where they're needed and reduce resources where they're not. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
I can speak to a little of that, Bill. Like when you discuss data and metrics, we are working on that already. So we actually have some great data on the use of the GIS application on the website. We are in the process of collecting data around the community using cellular information. So that is something, we'll be presenting all that in the spring once we have all this data pulled together. We've been working on that. This is something for this year that we're taking a keen look at and collecting a lot of data on a number of things so we can do a more thorough analysis. So we are well on our way to doing that, but great suggestion.
Reg?
Okay, so, excuse me. So I was listening to Karen, and I am a PMP, certified PMP, so when you were speaking great language, great love language to me, it was fantastic. But I want to point out that, one, I love the GIS. I think everyone loves it. I think universally it just really reached out, and I don't want to see that going away. I think that's something that's going to go well for us. I am disappointed, as Eric said, that 3, we want to remove it. I don't want to remove it. I think it's valuable. I think something that we need to have. It's something that we've been asking for. But I also been struggling with 5 and thinking maybe we could combine 3 and 5 together. If there's a way to do that, to combine the 2 of them together, put it in and make it into one, we can achieve both topics, both goals. But as someone said, there are a lot of goals here, and there are just really too many. And we do need to hone it down to a more manageable number. And I think 7 is one that we definitely want to keep. I think it's an important asset to us. Long-term capital plan, I think, is very valuable for us to have that as one of our goals. The other one, the board development. I'm not sure that's really a goal for us. I think it's something we want to have, but I'm not sure it's one of the goals that we want to set up and say, hey, we're going to make this our goal. I think it's something that we just know that we have to do, but not as a major goal, because, again, we've got too many goals. So just bring it down to a more manageable number.
Thanks. Sky?
I agree with number 1 and number 2, and I also combined number 3 with number 5. Those 2 seem to go together with me. It would make a large goal, but I think it's doable. I kept number 6, and I think number 7 is very important with the long-term capital plan. We're getting old, our facilities are getting older, and they seem to be aging out almost at the same time. So I think that's important to do. Board development, we could have, a Mad Minute, a 2-minute training at every board meeting, by a staff member. It wouldn't. I thought Dan's was very enlightening tonight, and it was just 10 minutes. That's good, but some of the other things can be much shorter. So that's where I stand on all these.
Thanks.
I just wanted to emphasize that these are high-level goals. So I disagree with Karen, and yet you have to know where you're starting, where you want to end up, and how you're going to get there. And so you kind of, you know the goals are going to be the end point, and you want to back up from there in order to meet the end point.
Bill?
Just a quick comment, and I'll get out. I'm just listening more and more about this board development, and I don't think it should necessarily be a goal for the organization, but I think it might be something that the board internally champions, and we work on it ourselves. We may at some point have to turn it over to staff and say, this is what we found, but I think that we could go a long way internally with a task force, a subgroup of this board to work on some of that kind of developmental process.
We do have 5 minutes left. I want to hop in the queue, but I also want to, Delilah, did you have anything? I don't want to, okay. This has been, I really agree with that, Bill. I think that that's a really great idea because I was going into the, first off, I'm hearing actually, dare I say, almost consensus for a couple of the things that we're talking about because I'm hearing, converging 3 and 5 would be interesting. We're interested in the data and the analytics. The one thing that I wrote down that I was super passionate about, which I think a lot of people have already said, which is about the long-term capital planning. I really think that, we ought to be thinking about the next 50, 60 years of this organization and what that means and what that takes across the entire Columbia Association. So that was the one that I was most passionate about, but I think, I'm excited to hear some conversation that we're going to have for those other items. And I really like your idea, Bill, because I went into this thinking about board development and thinking about how important that it needs to be, but I could totally see us potentially making a board committee over this year and figuring out what board development looks like internally and not necessarily asking staff just yet to make that a goal of theirs for this fiscal year. So, Sky, second time?
We do a computer in training every 3 months, so we could do board developments, something on the same schedule that on opposite months.
Other thoughts? Mike, second time?
I agree that number 7, I think there appears to be unanimous consent that that's an important one. I don't think there's really consent around what would be the second one we add to this list. And I think, when we come back for old business, we're just going to have some way to hash out how we're going to order the other ones. I'll say, I think having the board lead the board development is a really bad idea. I mean, that's like the blind leading the blind. So that's just my take on that suggestion.
Sorry, Eric, second time?
So I think when we're looking at goals for the organization, we need to think broader, higher, and goals that really impact the entire community. I mean, I know we've got a lot of board-related goals that are really very narrowly focused on us, but I think this year we need to think broader and think of goals that really impact everyone living in CA, and that's why I think 3 really needs to be one of the goals. We passed it last year. It's one of the goals that we should keep going this year and really work on getting our resident costs down, getting our resident HOA fees more in line with other HOAs in the area, and really bring more value to our residents, because that's what we should be about. We should be about bringing value and lowering costs and getting us more in line with other organizations.
Sky, you hit your second time limit. I'm sorry. Other comments?
Could have separated these out.
Last call for any other comments? All right, very good. We will move on. Sean, do you have any other thoughts or comments right now?
No, this is one thing. I think we talk a lot about this board and its focus on strategic planning. These goals are really focused on that. Bill had mentioned there's a number of studies. This is kind of what the board, should be working on. The comment on this goal number 3 that we've looked to remove, analyze opportunities to add value, reduce costs. So this is a discussion. This is a difficult goal for the board to evaluate, because there's 10 members of the board, and when we say add value, 5 members might think we're adding value. 5 members might say, well, no, you're not reducing costs. So, it's hard to kind of have, a definitive quantitative goal for this that is going to appease the whole board. Part of what the board's doing is saying, we talk about long-term capital planning. Well, what are the next 57 years? Well, the next 57 years isn't going to be cutting costs, for the next 57 years. It's, the reality is it's going to be adding costs, and what those are and how it's done and what the path for that is to make it affordable is the discussion. But if the board wants to say, no, we just want to reduce the annual charge, reduce costs, and move, and that's it, well, then it's sort of diminishing returns, because yes, we can continue to cut costs and get leaner and leaner, but then the services are going to get dropped. And, residents aren't going to have access to things they want because we're lowering the annual charge. So, this is a board strategic decision to think about, what direction does this board want to go in, and where is that value, or is it just, hey, reduce costs at any expense, at any cost, no pun intended. So this is a goal that's hard to quantify. And, we do things that we present throughout the year. Like Dan gave a great presentation last fall. He's going to do the same thing again to talk about what CA does to make things affordable and accessible to all members of the community. There's also, we have a membership-driven business that, is reliant on membership fees, both resident and non-resident, and you have to be sensitive to that, and there's a balance there. So, and then on top of that, we've got the facility. So there's a lot to consider there. Just, ask the board to really think long-term and strategically, what do they want? And then, adding more things that are quantitative to this goal if you want to incorporate it.
All right, very good. Thank you, Sean. We're on to our next agenda item.
Can we ask Sean some questions?
We are out of time for that agenda item, and for that agenda item, I think you have hit your second time. So
Motion to add 10 minutes to ask Sean questions on the previous agenda item.
I'll second that.
Okay. There's a motion to amend the agenda to add 10 minutes.
And can I ask a question of you, Colin, about the rules of how we're operating about this?
So the motion is to amend the agenda to add 10 minutes to item 8A. That was moved by Eric, seconded by Karen. Discussion.
I have a question specifically for you about how we're conducting these meetings. My understanding from the email that you sent to all of us was that we would be allowed to speak twice each for 3 minutes at a time. But it didn't sound like it was a limit. It sounded to me like it was like, this is what we're trying to do because we want to make sure that everybody gets to speak. However, if there's still time, or if we have additional questions, what you're saying is you already spoke your 2 times, you don't get to speak again.
For that item, yes.
Only if the time's up, or if now that we've added time, do people get to speak again? But we've gone and added time, so if everybody's spoken twice, does that mean we've added time and nobody gets to speak? I want to understand the rules, so.
Per item, you have to speak 2 times.
And that's
3
it?
minutes per item, yes.
And that's it? No more, even though we still have time left and no one else has anything to say, you can no longer have any input into the conversation?
Mm-hmm. That's what's in the rules.
What rules are you referring to?
We're off topic.
We are off topic. The motion on the floor is to amend the agenda to add 10 minutes to item 8A. Is there any discussion? Okay. The motion on the floor is to amend the agenda to add 10 minutes to item 8A. A vote yes extends the time by 10 minutes. Sky?
No.
Reg?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Mike?
No.
Eric?
Yes.
Delilah?
No.
Bill?
Yes.
And I will vote no. That is 4 in favor, 4 opposed. The motion does not pass. It fails. So we move on to the next agenda item, which is 8B, the budget schedule for FY 2027.
Okay, so this is really no vote required of the board. This is the usual budget schedule we do throughout the year. This is on our schedule to discuss it, but we have the new CFO, Sean McCollum, starting on Monday. So, this will be back on the agenda for the next meeting, but I wanted to have the board take a look at it. In particular, because just the first item, the Community Village survey and online engagement, we as the board may recall, we've not gotten much of a response on these surveys throughout the year. So we were, in discussions about having a town hall. We thought it might be more productive to have a town hall meeting where, the budget kickoff is part of that, and engaging people throughout that, but also with the town hall, maybe to have some other topics that could be discussed that are more broadly, CA-wide. But making the budget part of that, and just to see if maybe it's, we're getting more feedback through, a town hall in person or online. rather than the survey, because it hasn't really been productive. And then there's some other items on there that kind of go along with that. There's another survey, but that might be another opportunity to have another town hall to discuss the budget, to engage people, so.
Excellent. Thank you, Sean. Stephanie, do you have anything to
Well,
add
the
there?
only thing I was going to add, because we are trying to redo it and consolidate it a little bit, that the main thing that you need to keep intact is that you want to end in February, you're going to work your way back, so you have to have November where you're holding your vote on the guidance for the draft budget, and if you're going to have the town hall, you'll want it in September, at the beginning of September, so that you have time for the CA staff to analyze and synthesize and do all the stuff with it to actually make the budget. Because there are a lot of items that go into the budget, and it's not just something like you just snap your fingers and it's there. So, you know, a good month and a half or something at certain points, or 2 months to actually get it turned around.
Excellent. Very good. Okay. So are there any, we'll start with any questions for Sean and or Stephanie. Eric?
Yeah, looking at the schedule, I see 2 board votes. A board vote to provide guidance, looks like around December timeframe when the capital budget, membership rates, and annual charge rate and cap, and then a final vote on the same thing plus the emergency cash reserve funding. The question I have is why wouldn't we also provide guidance on the emergency cash reserve funding in December, because those all impact each other?
It certainly can be added. I mean, this one, just to have something for you to look at, is last year's with the dates changed. It's all in motion with new people coming. I mean, we've got Sean coming. Sean's in his first full year. I'm in the new director of finance role. So we kind of want to do things different. We want to consolidate it. So when you look at the one that you're going to vote on, I'm willing to bet that it's changed.
Well, there's 2 votes. So I'm just wondering why the guidance vote and the final vote are different.
Okay. Bill?
Yep. Just a quick response there. I believe that we contemplate the emergency cash reserve late in the board year, the fiscal year, because we need to find out where we are as far as expenses have gone. If we establish some sort of boundary or some sort of determination mid-year and still have more than a few months left in our fiscal year, our projections may be off, and it might be best to just wait until that later date so that we can determine what is the best course of action.
Thanks. Mike?
Right, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Sean.
No, I'm sorry. Bill's correct. So that's why it's not on the previous board vote. It's usually we're not aware of like what the reserves funding will be until later in the fiscal year.
Mike?
So I really like the proposals to streamline and try new things. I think town halls instead of surveys, I think it's always good to try new things. So I like all these ideas to try new things and streamline. One thing in particular, I think the board often gets confused that we have these 2 votes on the operating and capital budgets and the membership guidance vote back in November or something, and then we voted on it again in February. I think it would be beneficial for the board to understand that we're narrowing down the scope of what we're actually making decisions on, and that we're making the final decisions on those things much earlier in the process instead of saying we're making them all at the end. So that would be one thing I would like to see. I don't know if it's a change or just a clarification in this, but yes, I like the proposal to try new things.
Sky?
Yeah, a couple of things. One comment I make every year that, at least to me, the goal is to do this on a 2-year rotation rather than a 1 year, but with the tariffs and everything else, I don't see that happening for quite a while, but I will say the same thing next year. And secondly, you said that the surveys didn't give us very much information. From where I stand. Individuals worked a lot of, spent a lot of time on the surveys, and some villages did it as a board function at a board meeting. If you're going to supplant that with a town hall, you will probably get a fewer number of people, but they will feed off each other and come up with more ideas or become more passionate about the ideas that they have. So maybe I misunderstood you about the success of the surveys in the past.
Yeah, Scott, we just weren't getting a lot of responses to the surveys. So, the questions that we had in there, were great, and the people that filled them out, that was productive, but there were so few people filling out the surveys that we didn't think that's really a reflection of the community. So that's why we wanted to try something new. And then I agree with you on the 2-year budget. We just had some transition from me to Stephanie to now Susan's retirement and Sean coming in. This was not the year to start the 2-year budget, but we looked, we're going to look in the future, probably next year, to look at really going back to that 2-year budget cycle.
Yeah, it's on both of our lists to get it to a 2-year. This is just not the year for it.
Any other questions or comments? I'll throw out, I'm also a big fan of the consolidation, and I love the idea of having a town hall for the reasons that Mike and Sky shared. I think it's helpful if people have conversation with each other rather than just taking a survey. So I think that we might, even if it's fewer people, I'm hopeful that we would have higher quality conversation and hopefully higher just outcome for the community because of that kind of engagement and interaction. So. All right, thank you. All right, we are going to move on to 8C, which is the ethics policy for 15 minutes. John?
All right, is everybody still awake? No, I'm losing it rapidly, I'll be quite honest with you. But we'll try to go through here. All right, let me just start off by making some general comments. First off, in terms of the impetus for this is what you wanted. This is from the board. So this memorandum was in response, and it's meant to provide topics, concepts for discussion in terms of what we heard from the board. Some of the areas that you identified as potential areas of concern and for improvement, we went back and tried to translate those into more tangible ideas, and we call them concepts. You may decide you like some, you don't like others. We don't have specific language here. There's some tweaking to do. But I will say this, that just some generally, what we're trying to do by this is modernize the governance, enhance transparency, and reinforce public trust in CA's leadership, which is you. These find support in our governing documents, and they reflect best practices in civic and nonprofit governance. So the key themes, number one, transparency. The current ethics panel charter mandates internal reporting, but it lacks public-facing disclosures. So I heard earlier today about certain representations about what happened in the past. Well, none of that is public, so anybody can say what happened, but right now it's confidential, right? The public does not know what happens in terms of ethics. And what we propose doing, one of the recommendations is at least an ethics report that's public-facing every year, which I think would enhance that. Now, we proposed anonymous, but if you all decide you want to name names, that's up to you. I think that would go a long way toward deterrence, let's just put it that way. So what we propose to do is to clarify how the ethical standards are applied and enforced, and make the process more visible and understandable to the public. Because right now, quite honestly, I don't think the public knows what you do with ethics. They don't. It's confidential. Second, accountability. We believe that reforming the ethics policy would ensure
meaningful consequences for unethical conduct, and also clarify the roles and responsibilities of board members and staff. What we would like to see is to enforce standards more objectively, especially around issues about frivolous or weaponized complaints, and I've heard that in public meetings of this board about weaponizing, so that's an attempt to respond to some of the comments that were made in that regard. Third area, risk management. This is part of a broad risk management study. Unethical conduct is a risk to the organization. It's a substantial risk to the organization. And by clarifying and setting forth standards, we think we can improve in that area and, as part of your fiduciary duties, minimize the risk to the organization. Fourth, cost efficiency. Unethical conduct costs you money. I've heard a lot of talk tonight about money and accountability and affordability. Well, when there are ethics violations, it costs money to investigate them. It costs money to do training. It costs money to do legal research. It costs money to do have complaints, to have our ethics board do things. It costs money for legal settlements. All those things cost money. And I think this is an effort to improve those aspects. And finally, as something I touched on earlier, it's part of your fiduciary responsibility, right? Improving and enhancing the ethics policies are essential to fulfilling your fiduciary duties. So what we see in some of these concepts, and again, they're not finalized, and we want to hear what you have to say, and we'll go back and make changes and bring something else, is these align with nonprofit governance standards, public ethics reporting, mandatory training, acknowledgement of policies, clearer definition of board members' roles and responsibilities and consequences. So that's what we're trying to do here. I think there was an ethics policy passed a couple of years ago. There was an ethics panel that was established. We've seen how it works, and I think it's a good time now to say, before we get too far, maybe we can enhance that. We can make the process better, and that's where we're coming from. So I know we're starting with 10 minutes for each, so we can start in number 1, and that's to create.
The good news, John, is that didn't get passed. We're doing 15 minutes, the whole thing.
15 minutes, okay, so.
And we're down to 8 and change.
8 and change, all right. Well, here's the deal. I think these are pretty well set forward. I think it would help to establish clear policies. It would help, honestly, when someone violates the ethics policies and they're reprimanded publicly, that goes a long way toward deterrence, right? We have a 3 strikes you're out rule here because we don't want an unethical board. We don't want a habitual violator serving on the board. I heard some comments that I've heard in the past that you have no power to remove anyone. That's just not true. Okay, I disagree with that. I've got a legal opinion long-standing from a very good lawyer that was published a long time ago. You do have the power to remove somebody's board. And it's in the statute, honestly, and then you defer to the corporate documents, and we've analyzed that, and I disagree with saying you don't have the power. So if someone come in here and we find one of the board members is embezzling funds, what you're saying is you have no power to remove. Can't be. It cannot be. And I think legally that's incorrect. Training I think is imperative for the board to protect you and to protect the organization from a risk management perspective, I think you need to have ethics training every year. Again, we want to go and have sanctions for frivolous or weaponized ethics violations. We don't want to have that happen. And I think that's a deterrent factor, because if you file those, I think that's an ethics violation in itself. And I think it also makes a person filing think twice about filing an action that's in bad faith or without substantial justification, which is how I would define a frivolous complaint. The other things are one serious limitation we have here is to remove your indemnification if you commit an ethical violation and it results in costs to the organization. If someone commits a violation right now and the organization incurs lots of money, the residents are paying for that. Is that fair to have them pay for unethical behavior? That's the thinking there. So that's a summary. Again, these are meant for ideas, for discussion. That's the rationale. Be happy to, get your input.
So we have 5 minutes and change for this agenda item. I'm moved to add 25 minutes. Okay. So
second that.
Okay. So amend agenda for 8C to add 25 minutes. Moved by Eric, seconded by Karen. Any discussion on adding 25 minutes? Okay, so again, the motion is to add 25 minutes for this discussion. Sky?
Yes.
Reg?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Delilah?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. That's 8 in favor, so that'll put us at 30 minutes, roughly, about now. Groovy. Okay. I'm open to the floor for any discussion, comments, questions. Eric?
So I think these suggestions are very dangerous for the board and for this organization. We have restrictions in here that basically violate our First Amendment rights and can no longer support other candidates for office. We're curbing how we can express our opinions to our constituents. So it makes it a lot harder for us to stake a position, especially when we're running for re-election. And the last one is incredibly concerning. We are volunteer board members. We don't get paid outside of a free membership and a gift card, but we are volunteer board members. And to take actions to put us individually at financial risk is dangerous. It is incredibly dangerous. And the thing is, we talk about ethics violations. Who makes the decision on what's an actual ethics violation? A lot of times when we talk about ethics, it's very complex and it's not necessarily cut and dry. There's differences of opinion. So who's actually making the ultimate determination of whether an ethics violation took place or not? And that's, if I read this correctly, that's the ethics panel. But the ethics panel isn't hired by the board.
No, I mean, just before.
I've got the floor.
Well, you asked the question, I'm just trying to respond. Ultimately, the board decides if an ethics violation. The ethics panel makes a recommendation. The way it's written now, the board decides.
I'm looking at this and I basically see the CA will not indemnify directors and officers for acts or omissions that are determined by the ethics panel. That's what it says here on page 4. So we've got the situation where the ethics panel is placing judgment on the board, and yet the ethics panel isn't hired by the board. The ethics panel is hired through the procurement process, of the staff process. So we're basically, in effect, almost reporting to an ethics panel that's a staff hired panel. And that's just upside down as far as an organizational structure. we're the board, we're the governing body. We need to be the governing body. And to limit our indemnification places a huge financial risk on us individually, and that's incredibly concerning. And also make it less likely that residents want to run for this office. We need to be more open. We need to be more transparent. We talk about transparency. Good luck finding the charter for the ethics panel online. You can't. So we need to be more transparent, and we need to understand that we are the governing body of this organization. Thank you.
Thanks. Mike?
I like all of these concepts in general and all the proposals in general. I do think there are a few that the scope I think would probably benefit from being changed. I do think it's critical. I think having the ethics panel involved and having the board as far removed from judging whether an ethical violation has occurred or not, keeping the board as far away from that decision as possible is for the better. That the whole point of having the panel is to have a dispassionate, objective group doing that instead of interested parties making that. So I think as far away from all this as we can keep the board, the better. I think that that probably the prohibition, I really want to see the exact text of what we're saying as far as once a decision's been made, board members can't contradict it. I think that could go a bit too far. That board members are elected, they need to be able to explain to people why they voted in the minority on certain decisions. And so I think that's important to not penalize people for talking about, hey, I did vote against the board and here's why. I do think there should be some emphasis there on if a board member goes a bit too far and is defaming the organization or another board member instead of just saying, here's why I disagreed, or if they're, just fabricating information. That, I think, is something that needs to be prohibited. And, the ban on campaigning, I'm not really sold on that. I think if villages have rules on campaigning, we should be following those rules. But certainly, if we have that in there, we got to be clarifying, hey, we're talking about, going and campaigning and, putting up flyers, and that if you're going to say, hey, my friend that lived in another village asked me who I should vote for, you can still give a passing recommendation. But those exceptions aside, I really like what's being proposed here.
Karen?
Yeah, I actually have a lot to say about this. This is so disappointing. I cannot tell you how disappointing these changes are to me. I feel that right now that the ethics policy is used by certain individuals on this board to bully and intimidate other board members to silence them. And I'm the one that asked for the frivolous. I was like, for frivolous ethics complaints, just because you have a disagreement with someone, I don't think you should be able to file an ethics complaint against them. I think it's ridiculous. I don't know why we're trying to silence each other. I don't know why we don't want to hear from one another. It's become quite clear that the only reason that we're even bringing this up, the only reason this was brought up was to weaponize the ethics policy against certain board members and to be able to remove them from the board. The one thing that I really do like on this is, number one, create and publish an annual ethics report. I would love that. I would love to see the complaints. I would very gladly like to see if board members are filing complaints against each other. I want to see who filed it, and I want to see what the finding was from the ethics panel. I would welcome that. I would like us to go back the past several years and release the information on all of the ethics complaints that have been filed since fiscal year 2022, 23. Yes. Absolutely, let's start doing that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I do not like the idea that we are disenfranchising the villages in this process. If you have someone who is egregiously unethical, of course they should be removed from the board. But the villages should be involved in the process for removing that person from the board. They are the ones who elected their council representative. They are the ones who need to have a say. So we need to have a process. And the thing is not a single person on this board is ever going to touch a dime of CA money. None of us are the treasurer. None of us are the CFO. Not a single person here is ever going to have the opportunity to embezzle money. Maybe I'm wrong, but I have yet to be given access to any financial systems that would allow me to embezzle any money or to sign contracts so that I can direct money to my relatives, my family. So a lot of this stuff, it just seems silly on the surface. And the last thing I will point out is the residents are allowed to file anonymous ethics complaints against the board. If they don't like something that a board member is doing, they disagree with a point that they're making, they too can file anonymous complaints against us. That would be in the report. And so I think that some board members should be very, very careful with these changes, because if the public disagrees with you, you could end up getting a frivolous ethics complaint filed against you.
Thank you. Other comments or thoughts?
Go ahead.
Hold on, Sky.
I'm waiting for that.
Gosh, I have too much to say about all of them. I don't know where to start. In general, a board is a team, and I believe that a board then speaks with one voice. We vote. Before the vote, we discuss. We try and change each other's minds. We vote. Our votes are public. And once the decision has been made, I believe that there are three things you can do. You can talk up that decision, you can remain quiet, or you can talk against that decision. I think as a team, we need to either be quiet or talk in favor of that decision. Your time for trying to influence the decision is in a public meeting or a closed meeting, and it's before the vote has been taken. I love the idea of an annual report. I like some identifying information, but not a whole lot. And I agree, I think we should include the past few years so people can see how effective the current ethics policy is. Let's see, what else? Whether or not something is frivolous or is weaponizing, to me, both these terms are subjective. They're not objective. Maybe an attorney could find the objectivity and could define these two, but I think some people would say, yes, that's a frivolous complaint, and somebody else would say, no, that is not a frivolous complaint. So I have a little bit of difficulty with understanding that one. Let's see. The campaigning against and campaigning for other villages. Last year, I was in that position. I wanted to campaign against the incumbent and for the candidate. And I didn't know if this would be an okay thing for me to do and be public about it. So I asked the general counsel, and the
You got 30
advice
seconds,
was,
Sky.
don't do it.
You're okay.
So I didn't do it. Is my time up?
30 seconds.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I guess that's enough for now. Thanks.
Delilah?
I think that, that we need to look at the liability that the board presents to the organization and having some guardrails to protect the organization from some potentially bad board members is not a bad thing. For the 3 strikes you're out rule, my question would be, would there be any infractions egregious enough to surpass that and just be 1 strike you're out?
I mean, we could write it any way you want, but yes, I mean, 3 strikes of a general nature, or certainly there's a conduct bad enough that one particularly bad instance would be enough for the board, to vote to do that. So, yeah, it's the way it's proposed there is not to say you must have 3 strikes before the board can vote. If somebody was doing something really bad, that would be enough.
Reg?
So this is an interesting conversation, and it's one that's going to bring up a lot of emotions and a lot of concerns from both sides of the aisle. I think everyone in university likes the idea of having an annual ethics report. I think that is a good idea. I think we need to see them be owned up and say, hey, this is what our ethic report has been, so the community can see it. I think that's a good thing. I'm concerned that when we start looking at the 3 strikes and you're out rule, I'm a little concerned as to how that's actually going to work. And my concern is, I don't know how many, I know Sean has a couple of ethics reports. I mean, thank God nothing came up, but he has a couple. And I know there are other members of this board that have a couple. So what happens when they get their 3rd? Are they out? I'm sorry?
We should really be careful about not disclosing confidential information.
Okay, but you get my point. What I'm saying is that you don't know, we don't know which board member has more than one, or, maybe they have 2 or 3. I don't know, but you get to the point where that person, may be looking at hey, you're 3 strikes and you're out. And they could be totally innocent. It could be one of these things where a community member decides, I'm going to pull the plug. I'm going to, send in an ethics violation against me. And then I could be totally innocent. But 3 strikes, I'm out. How fair is that? How does that look for us? And we keep talking about, well, we're being fair, and we've got to look at the fiduciary responsibility and all that. But ladies and gentlemen, let's kind of look at this. You want to have something that's going to be fair, that's going to be. I think no one here, as Karen said, no one here has access to anything. Any finance equipment or anything except for these, laptops. No one here is going to be stealing anything. And even if we were put in that position, if someone on this board stole something, guarantee I'll be the first one to help them out the door, get them off, because we don't want them on the board. Okay, thank you. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I really feel that what we're really looking at is taking our First Amendment rights and throwing it out in the trash can. That's what I have a problem with. Because I've spent too much time in boots in different places in the world, like you have, and fight for my country, because I believe in First Amendment rights is one of the things that I fight for. And to take it away, I've got something to say about it.
Sean, did you have some response?
I did, yeah. Reg, you made a statement. I think you might be confused. You said I had 2 ethics violations.
No, I said at least one, but I don't know for sure. And, if I misspoke, I apologize.
John?
I just want to clarify, because I think there's a misunderstanding. The policy on 3 strikes route refers to violations. Anyone can file a complaint. There's no 3 complaints and you're out, because the complaints have to be sustained. So no one is getting kicked off because some resident decides to go against you because he doesn't like you. It would have to be a confirmed ethics violation. So complaints are, old lawyers saying anybody can file a lawsuit. Doesn't mean you can win.
So complaints don't matter, confirmed findings of violations do.
Bill?
All right, get the bad cleanup here, I guess. Reg, I fought for this country too.
Yes, you did.
Just a heads up.
Yep.
All right, I see in all 10 of these some opportunity, but I also see a great deal of concern that if they're not executed well, we could wind up with a poorer ethics product. So I think we need to be very precise with our discussions moving forward. With respect to the annual report, the audit committee already has an annual report on ethics that's created. It is a confidential document. It's private to the organization. And I would suggest that we take that one particular recommendation, send it to audit, and then see what they would do in order to de-anonymize that report that is already created. That would be something that would be a cost savings because we're not reinventing the wheel of that kind of stuff. 3 strikes and you're out, I don't believe is very good. I don't think it works in the criminal world. I don't think it would work very well in ethics. I think that there's a duality of egregiousness and persistence, and those things need to be taken into account when approaching any ethics complaint and the processing of that complaint. And I think it'd be better stated as egregious and persistence as an axis. That would be more helpful. My engineer in me is coming out. Sorry about that. Kind of getting into this shows up here first, but globally, there's a discussion about the ethics panel decisions. I think that ought to be, if found to be in violation of an ethics policy, so that it's the entire process carried out, not just the ethics panel recommendation. Disqualification, I'm a believer in retribution and second acts and recidivism. I don't think lifetime bans make sense. I think that if we're talking about banning people, if they are found to have violated ethics, the embezzlers, the fraudsters, the misogynists, whoever, that ban should only be about 5 years. And I think it would give people a chance to rehabilitate, and then they could come back at another time. And to the point that nobody here on this board alone has any access to anything, that's true. But we certainly navigate through this entire world in Columbia Association. And if you're going to do something, it would more than likely be a conspiracy, and it would be sad to convict any staff members, but the board member absent would not have any consequence. So keep that in mind. Not saying that it's going to happen. I think everybody here is a very high caliber person. Oh, really? Okay. That went fast. Annual training, yes. Weaponized and frivolous, saying what Sky said, that has to be defined because that's messed up unless we have a good definition. Saying that the system is weaponized now is ironically a way to weaponize the system. So we need to figure out how to make that right. Speaking with one voice, you got to give people a little bit of room to say, I disagreed with what the board said. The board's decision is wise, and there's a line to walk there, but you can't be crazy about that. I'll save the rest for the next time we talk about this. And just close with, for anybody who said I had a lot to talk about, I asked for 10 minutes each on this. We could have had a much better discussion. That's all I can say. Thank you, guys.
9 minutes left. Eric, second time. Eric?
So I think we need to do a lot more with transparency on here. So I think we need to create more transparency. I mean, basics, let's get our policies online, including the ethics panel charter. If anyone tries to find the ethics panel charter online, good luck. It's buried somewhere in our minutes, but yeah, you can't even see your own ethics panel charter. I think the board needs to have access to all books, records, including any audits, any investigative reports, anything, contracts. I think that's a key part of transparency. I mean, we're the governing board, we're the governing body, and I think it's key that if there's a report or a contract that individual board members are interested in viewing as part of executing our fiduciary duties, I think we have a right to those reports, and that language needs to be in here to not only increase transparency, but also enable us to act in the best interests of the organization and fulfill our fiduciary duties. finally, I just want to reiterate that the limiting of indemnification is just very dangerous to each of us individually. I don't support this at all. I think it almost comes across as a threat. It almost comes across as like, you better not cross this line or else you could get sued personally, or you better think twice about running for the board because there's a risk of being sued personally if the ethics panel decides to limit your indemnification. So this is a huge risk. There is no reason why we should be limiting our indemnification. This is just dangerous for the board. Thanks.
Karen, second time?
Yeah, so I agree with Eric about the indemnification. I also want to talk about the ban on campaigning in village elections. I actively campaign in the village elections. If I think that there's a board member, there's a candidate out there who will be a much better board member, I'm going to go campaign for them, and I have a First Amendment right to do that. I have standing in every single village in Columbia because I am a lot owner. I may not be able to vote in their village election, but I can go and campaign there. I can go and canvass. And Sky, you had every right to go and canvass for a candidate who you thought would make the board better. I would have knocked doors for Reg if he needed it. I did knock doors for Eric. I knocked doors for people who I thought would improve this board. And I think every single one of us has a right to do that. If you want to come and canvass in another village, you should go do it. You should do everything in your power to get the best board that you possibly can to achieve the goals that you want to achieve while being on the board. So I think it's ridiculous. If I had said to Sky, if I thought Sky was the best candidate, and I had said to Sky, Sky, you want me to come and knock some doors for you? Bet she would have said yes. If I thought Bill was the best candidate, I bet he would have enjoyed me coming over and knocking doors for him. And that applies to every single person on this board. But I am going to knock doors and canvass for the best board candidates that I can find so that we have people on this board who serve the residents. And so I think number 9 needs to come out because we all have a First Amendment right to do that.
Mike, second time?
I'll just go back. I really agreed with John's logic on the indemnification, right? If someone does something so unethical that we felt compelled to remove them from the board, and then that person's actions end up getting CA sued, why would we ask the residents to pay for that? Like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So I think there's a good explanation for why we would do that. I think maybe we tighten up that language a bit to clarify that, hey, if it's going to be, we're taking the indemnification away for something that person created the situation where CA is getting sued. And if there's other stuff, like, no, they can still be indemnified if it wasn't directly related to their ethical violation. And I think maybe the board, I want to throw an amen behind what Delilah said, is we got to be thinking about what's good for the organization. Because I think maybe we might be missing, we're not worried about ethical stuff of like someone, hacking into our bank account and stealing money. It's my understanding that the things we're really concerned about, right? Let's say we publish this new transparent ethics violation, and Sean or John, correct me if I'm wrong, and it turns out like, oh boy, we had a whole bunch of ethics violations, and we've just told the world what they are. Well, that's going to matter to people that insure this organization and lend us money, and it's going to cost the residents money, right? That's why it's important, in my understanding, someone, correct me if I'm wrong, to remove a staff member, correct me if I'm wrong, to remove people for repeated or egregious unethical behavior. And I think there's some strong consensus I just want to highlight on increasing transparency and maybe the need to loosen up the one voice language, not entirely, but does sound like there's some broad consensus there. Over.
Other thoughts?
All right, I'll say a couple of things.
Yep.
Yeah, less than 3 minutes.
Less than 3 minutes left. Couple of things. I agree with you, Mike, on the indemnification, but once again, I would change the language in that, and it's not as determined by the ethics panel, but as if found to be in violation by the board of the ethics policy, so that it carries all the way through, and it's not just the ethics panel that would trigger the withdrawal of indemnification. My lips are getting tired. Eric? I have been involved in a number of ethics investigations in this corporation, and every time that there's been an investigation, the background information, the findings have always been presented at the investigation when the board considered it. I'm concerned that you are making implications that has been withheld from board members during the time of the investigation. Those things are made available. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that, okay? Karen, I just want to respectfully disagree with you on the village elections. I believe that it is very difficult if we have board members going door to door in other villages to be able to be certain that they're not disparaging sitting board members, which would be a violation of our current code of conduct. Could happen. Secondly, I think it's important for us to not try and influence others' elections and have a little faith and trust in the people who live in that village to elect the most and more competent candidate for that particular election. And it's just a difference of opinion. I don't want to put any spite or any kind of spit in it. That's just how I see it. And we can disagree. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
I'm going to, sorry, Reg, you can go. Reg?
Okay, thank you. I'll just say this.
40 seconds.
Okay, I'll just say this very quickly. I've had, and I've mentioned this before, I've had someone on this board who made comments about me to my board chair. I talked to several members of my board and chair this evening before coming to this meeting, and they verified again that indeed happened. I did not run out and say, I'm going to file an ethics complaint against this guy, because that's his right. That's his freedom of speech to say whatever he wants to. That's what I fight every day for, even though I actually disagree with the way he looks at me, what he thought of me during that time period. But that was his right. That was his freedom of speech, and that's what we're entitled to.
We are out of time for this agenda item. We're out of time. I just want to quickly throw out, I think ethics are good. I think that accountability and transparency are good. I want to thank John and Caroline and Sean for putting this together so that we could have conversation. I just want to throw it back to Sean and John real quick. Was this helpful? I think that we're probably going to continue, we're definitely going to continue this conversation, but is there anything else in the immediate term that you would need from us?
No, ultimately you'll have a vote. You can continue the discussion next time. We can refine. As I said, we threw out various concepts. We could go back and make changes. Maybe there's one you might all agree on, but there's going to be some votes, and that's why you're here. So you can decide. If you want to continue the discussion next time, that's fine. We just started this term. We have a break for the summer, so I'm looking for direction, and you've certainly given some tonight, and. If you want to continue it, we'll take it. But ultimately, the goal is if you want to do it, we'll come back with a specific proposal, and you can go through that and make your motions and decide what you want to do.
Excellent. All right, very good. Thank you. All right, moving on then to our next agenda item, which is President's Report and the report for the Inner Arbor Trust for questions only. Eric?
Yeah, just a general question on how we're handling the meetings. When did the board vote on changing our meeting structure regarding resident speak out and where we're not allowed to ask questions to the residents and limiting us to 2 speeches per item? I'm not aware that we took that vote, so I'm just wondering when did we vote on making those changes?
I'm wondering how that relates to the president's report of the report from the Inner Harbor Trust.
It's questions only, so it's a question.
But it's not, that for board operations, it's not on the agenda.
It's a question, and I think the president would be interested in it, so it's a question. I just want to know, just for my own edification, when did we vote on this?
I would say it's in the board operations policies and also in Robert's Rules of Order of how the meeting is conducted.
But this is a fundamental change from how we've operated in the past year after year after year. So the question I have is, when did the board vote to make this change in how we're operating our board meetings?
When I was elected chair. Reg, do you have a question?
Actually, just a comment. The Ann Arbor Trust report is not, it's not ready this evening, so.
Thank you.
Okay, just give you that.
Other questions? Okay, chair's remarks. It's late. The AC is off in here. Let's go home. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. Second, any objection? We are adjourned at 10:10.
All right. Have a good night.